365 Days with Self-Discipline. 365 Life-Altering Thoughts on Self-Control, Mental Resilience, and Success. By Martin Meadows. Prologue. Uzuk woke up with the first rays of sunlight hitting his face. He scanned the interior of his dusty hut, constructed with twigs, mud, and dry grass. He scratched his back, which, as always, had been bitten by insects over and over again throughout the night. Grateful that the night had passed without any danger to his family, he crawled out, careful not to make any sounds. It was a crisp and clear morning. He would have loved to take his family for a walk around the waterfall and play with his little son, but there was work to do. It had been 5 days since the tribe ate something more substantial than a fistful of berries. Unfazed by the bloodthirsty mosquitoes buzzing by, Uzuk walked over to the fire pit and warmed his calloused hands. The light scent of wood smoke filled his nostrils. He rubbed his hands together, still feeling the painful absence of his index finger lost during that fateful hunt many moons ago. One by one, his fellow tribesmen crawled out of their huts and joined him at the fire. There was Dizgab, his friend who was bitten by a snake and was left partly paralyzed on his left side. Nock limped along next, with his broken foot badly healed, and a part of his skull partly caved in after a stone thrown by an enemy tribesman hit him smack dab in the middle of his forehead. Reknod sauntered into the group next. So far, he was the luckiest of the band, with only a deep scar on his cheek, left from an attack by a tiger that had massacred a half of the tribe. Other men, some missing limbs, some having lost their entire families, some with even more horrible memories, joined the group. When the men were ready, they separated into 2 groups and ventured out to secure food for the tribe. They made it back to the camp in the early afternoon, forced to make a hasty retreat after spotting a leopard resting in the thick bushes. Yet again, they had failed to obtain food, but at least they were grateful that, unlike 2 moons ago, this time nobody had been hurt. With empty stomachs, the adults gathered around the fire pit while small children, supervised by teenagers armed with spears and bows, played by the creek a short distance from the camp. They reluctantly decided that the area could no longer support them. While clean water was plentiful and predators rare, food was becoming increasingly scarce and successful hunts were few and far between. The next day they would gather their belongings, put them on their backs, and walk for a long time until they would find another suitable place for a new temporary dwelling. Some would die along the way, some would get hurt, but such was life, Uzuk thought to himself. A human being couldn't ever stop struggling and fighting to survive each day. I can hear you thinking, what a weird prologue to a book about self-discipline. Bear with me, please. Our basic human nature hasn't changed since the days of Uzuk. While the vast majority of humans fortunately no longer have to live in constant discomfort and fear of death, we would still do well to possess even a fraction of mental toughness and self-discipline our ancestors had. In the modern world, it's easy to live without even a modicum of self-discipline. Back then, nobody could avoid discomfort. It was a fact of life that one couldn't thrive unless they ventured into the world, facing unknown risks and possible death in a quest for a better life. Today, most people are unable to wake up early without an alarm clock, and even then, it takes them 30 minutes just to crawl out of bed. Most would find it impossible to sleep on the bare floor, with insects crawling over them and biting their bodies the entire night. If they experienced just a slight ache, most would skip work and complain about how much pain they were in. Most wouldn't be able to fast for an entire day, let alone go without food for 5 days in a row. Compared to our ancestors, we have it easy. Yet, or perhaps because of it, so many people struggle with self-discipline today. A great majority of them do nothing to fix that, and the ones who try are often met with ridicule. If you belong to the group that is trying to better themselves or wanting to do so, the book you're now reading is for you. I wrote 365 Days with Self-Discipline with the intention of creating a daily companion to help you embrace self-discipline in your everyday life. As the author of several best-selling books about self-discipline and being a personal growth junkie myself, self-control is a topic close to my heart. I believe that if a person wants to reach their full potential, he or she can't avoid discomfort. Doing things that might not be entirely pleasant is key to achieving long-term objectives. In the following pages, I'll share with you one thought for each day of a year that is devoted to the topic of self-discipline, mental toughness, success, or self-improvement in general. The thoughts come from some of the world's brightest minds, successful entrepreneurs, athletes, best-selling authors, researchers, performers, bloggers, and more. Since the entries are brief and get straight to the heart of the matter, you'll be able to quickly find ongoing inspiration to continue working on your most important long-term goals and on becoming an ever better person. Due to the large number of days in a year, some themes will inevitably repeat, but I strove to address each subtopic from different perspectives. Please note that I have quoted various people from numerous sources, including books, articles, blogs, speeches, interviews, and more. By citing their words, I don't necessarily endorse their works or their persona. A note on quotes in the physical and ebook version of the book: whenever I could, I cited the source and included an endnote. Unfortunately, the exact source of a small number of quotes, particularly those by historic figures, was elusive to me. Whenever I couldn't find the author, as is often the case with many inspirational quotes circulating around the internet, instead of risking misattribution, I wrote unknown. Let's turn the page and start with day 1 and the most important thought that defines the difference between a self-disciplined person and a weak-willed one. Week 1. Day 1, on living the hard way. Life's easy when you live it the hard way, and hard if you try to live it the easy way. Dave Kakich. Self-discipline means living your life the hard way, resisting temptations and instant gratification, in order to receive bigger and better rewards in the future. It's certainly easier to avoid all kinds of discomfort and indulge yourself whenever you want, but in the end, all that you get from that approach is fleeting pleasure now at the expense of your future, which otherwise could have been much better. Consider a weak-willed person who, when faced with a challenge, immediately opts out. How likely is this person to achieve anything substantial in life if their primary value is to feel comfortable? How is this person going to manage a crisis that they must face? Even a relatively insignificant problem can become an insurmountable obstacle for a person who's been living a sheltered life and always avoided what's difficult or disagreeable. Now contrast that with a person who voluntarily makes his or her life harder. They seek out and welcome challenges as opportunities to grow. Each self-imposed affliction strengthens them, so that fewer and fewer difficulties in life overwhelm them. Day by day, they immunize themselves against problems, precisely because they seek them out. When life deals them an unexpected blow, they're ready to handle it because, thanks to living their lives the hard way, they're always ready for hardships. Day 2, on your choices. Your choices are made in a moment, but their consequences will transcend a lifetime. M.J. DeMarco. Eat this greasy, high-calorie hamburger or prepare a healthy salad? Sleep in and barely get to work on time, or wake up at 5 a.m. to work on your side business before going to work at your day job? Stop trying the moment you get rejected, or swallow your pride and keep going, despite hearing no dozens of times? It takes only a moment to make the wrong choice and jeopardize your future. What feels like an insignificant decision today can have a great, lasting impact on your future. Each choice sets a precedent, and when you make the same wrong choice several times in a row, it becomes your standard modus operandi. While one hamburger every now and then isn't likely to ruin your overall efforts to lose weight, underestimating the impact of repeatedly making the wrong choice can profoundly affect you over the course of the rest of your life. Each time you're faced with the decision between exerting self-discipline and taking it easy, remind yourself that the choice you're making today doesn't affect the present moment alone. A momentary decision can, and often will, reverberate for many years or even decades into the future. Day 3. On being a human. Willpower is what separates us from the animals. It's the capacity to restrain our impulses, resist temptation, do what's right and good for us in the long run, not what we want to do right now. It's central, in fact, to civilization. Roy Baumeister. Humans have the capacity to act against their urges in exchange for a better future. Unfortunately, many people live by the principle of if it feels good, do it, and if it doesn't, don't do it. Caving into your temptations whenever you feel them emerge is like relinquishing your humanity, in a way. As an intelligent human being, you have an ability, and I dare say an obligation, to make decisions that are based on rational thinking, not on your instincts alone. Strive to be a better human and embrace your humanity by exercising your willpower muscle, instead of succumbing to your most primal, and least helpful for your long-term goals, part of the brain. Your most primal instincts may provide temporary comfort, but seldom are good for the long term, except when there is a direct threat to your survival. Day 4, on creating systems. I value self-discipline, but creating systems that make it next to impossible to misbehave is more reliable than self-control. Tim Ferriss. A lot of people think that being self-disciplined means that you can sit in front of a delicious piece of cake and stare at it for hours without eating it. They think of resisting temptations as being like a knight defending his kingdom against the invader. If you go to seedy bars every week, your chances of getting punched in the face are higher than those of a person spending their evenings at home with a book. Likewise, the best way to protect yourself against temptations is to avoid them, and for that, plain old preparation is more valuable than self-control. Your chances of cheating on a diet are higher if you have forbidden foods at home. Removing them from your house, a simple act that requires little willpower, as long as you're satiated while doing so, will protect you when you get hungry and the urge to gorge on them hits you like a ton of bricks. Your chances of sleeping in are lower if you set 3 different alarms and place them away from your bed. You'll be less likely to waste time at work when you block the most distracting websites instead of relying on your willpower to stop you before loading those funny cat pictures. Prepare yourself for difficult situations by putting up roadblocks ahead of time, when your resolve isn't being tested. Your self-control system will do some of the heavy lifting for you, leaving your reserves of self-discipline to be used for the unplanned situations when they arise. Day 5, on enslavement to self. Before complaining that you are a slave to another, be sure that you are not a slave to self. Look within, you will find there, perchance, slavish thoughts, slavish desires, and in your daily life and conduct slavish habits. Conquer these, cease to be a slave to self, and no man will have the power to enslave you. James Allen. It's easy to delegate the responsibility for our lives and choices to other people. It's not your fault that you can't stick to a diet, it's because your friends constantly tempt you to grab something to eat with them. It's not your fault that you can't control your finances, it's those evil corporations that spend millions on advertising and leave you powerless to change. It's not that you lack willpower to exercise, people always want something from you and you never have the time to develop this healthy habit. In reality, nothing could be further from the truth. While external circumstances can affect you, in the end, whether or not they control your life depends on you. Just like James Allen said, when you achieve self-mastery, no one, and no thing, will have the power to enslave you. The next time you blame an external factor for your lack of self-discipline, think again. Was it the person eating chocolate next to you who controlled what you put in your mouth, or was it you? Day 6, on superhumans. Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact: everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you, and you can change it, you can influence it, you can build your own things that other people can use. Steve Jobs. Despite an enormous selection of movies about superhumans, they don't really exist. I know, it's shocking news, right? Nobody, including the world's biggest geniuses, was, is, or ever will be a superhuman, infinitely better in all aspects than the average mortal. It's easy to forget this fact when you look at the accomplishments of the people who are changing the world around you. After all, they appear to be so perfect, extremely productive, intelligent, beautiful, creative, persistent, strong, and the list goes on. Behind the scenes, everyone struggles in some areas of their lives. I'm an author of several books about self-discipline, but it doesn't mean that I never struggle with self-control. I deal with the same problems as every other person, and the only difference is that I've discovered how to handle some of them a bit more effectively. I've had my fair share of failures, found myself unable to resist some temptations, and I jeopardized some long-term goals because I succumbed to the allure of instant gratification. This is the human condition. People whom you consider to be extremely successful aren't that different from you. Many of them in the past had less willpower than you exhibit now, and many of them might be more disciplined than you in one aspect, but less disciplined in another. Becoming a self-disciplined person is within everybody's grasp. You don't need to have won the genetic lottery or get introduced to a country club to develop self-control, and neither you nor anybody else will ever achieve permanent, flawless self-mastery over every aspect of life. Accept that and accept yourself as well. Day 7, on poverty and self-discipline. A second line of research has shown that economic stress robs us of cognitive bandwidth. Worrying about bills, food, or other problems leaves less capacity to think ahead or to exert self-discipline. So, poverty imposes a mental tax. Nicholas Kristof. Financial stress, or for that matter, all kinds of stress, diminishes your ability to delay gratification. Consequently, poor people find it harder to resist temptations. In the end, they get stuck in a vicious cycle. They can't escape poverty because it imposes constant mental stress on them, which then leads them to making bad decisions, not only the financial ones, but also those relating to their health, relationships, and general future. Does it mean that if you're struggling financially, you're destined to have a bad life? Not necessarily. Taking personal responsibility and becoming conscious of the source of the problem can help you push ahead and overcome your circumstances. Launching one of my businesses put me in debt. It exerted immense daily stress on me. No matter what I was doing, there was always the thought in the back of my head that I had a debt to repay. In some months, I was so close to not meeting my obligations on time that I would have been forced to close up shop if it weren't for some money I managed to make at the last minute. This experience has made me realize that no matter what they say about money not bringing happiness, at least several months' worth of income kept as savings in the bank means the difference between a relatively stress-free life and the soul-crushing fear when you can't cover an urgent, important expense. If you're struggling with finances, make it one of your priorities to get out of debt as quickly as you can and build an emergency fund covering at least 3 to 6 months of basic living expenses. In addition to improving your financial health, it will dramatically reduce stress and strengthen your ability to delay gratification and make more optimal choices favoring your future. Week 2. Day 8 on unessential necessities. Epicurus wanted to examine the things he thought he needed so he could determine which of them he could in fact live without. He realized that in many cases, we work hard to obtain something because we are convinced that we would be miserable without it. The problem is that we can live perfectly well without some of these things, but we won't know which they are if we don't try living without them. William B. Irvine. Ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus would have his hands full in modern times if he wanted to spread his philosophy. We live in the world in which you feel you deserve to have luxuries. In fact, they're no longer considered luxuries but necessities because most people mistakenly think they can't live without them. The problem with mistaking luxuries for necessities is that it's impossible to develop powerful self-discipline if you need a lot just to function. How is a person who believes that they need to eat empty calories in the form of burgers, pizzas, or white bread supposed to lose weight? How likely is that an individual who thinks that it's necessary to lease a new car every 2 years will exert enough self-discipline to save money and deprive himself or herself of what they consider a basic human need? Periodically try living without something that you consider a necessity. You'll benefit in several ways. First, you'll voluntarily put yourself in an uncomfortable situation that will help you expand your comfort zone and develop your mental resilience. Second, you'll discover whether you really need this thing in your life, and if you find you don't, it will provide food for thought as to how many other things in your life are in fact not as important as you thought they were. This can then help you eliminate the unessential from your life and free up additional resources to focus on what's important. Finally, you will increase your ability to feel happy with less, including being happy in a situation when you're deprived of something involuntarily. Day 9, on your future self. In 4 studies, participants interacted with realistic computer renderings of their future selves using immersive virtual reality hardware and interactive decision aids. In all cases, those who interacted with virtual future selves exhibited an increased tendency to accept later monetary rewards over immediate ones. Hal E. Hirschfield. Studies suggest that people who are aided with technology to imagine their future selves are more likely to delay gratification. In the case of the cited study, they're more likely to save money for retirement. This shows that your self-discipline is largely affected by your ability to feel empathy toward your future self. If the vision of you 10, 20, or 30 years from now isn't particularly vivid, you'll have a hard time denying yourself pleasure today so that the stranger in the future can benefit. For this reason, consider occasionally meditating on your future self. Ask yourself if today you're grateful for the choices you made several years ago, or if you wish that in the past you had been more concerned about your future. Are the choices you're making today choices that are only benefiting the present you, but don't contribute to, or worse, jeopardize your well-being in the future? The person you'll become in 10 years will most likely not be the same person you are today, but it will still be you, and it's in your hands whether, 10 years from now, you'll look back and feel glad you extended self-empathy well into the future, or find that you decided to be selfish and steal from your future for some fleeting pleasure today. Day 10, on building your story. Words create sentences, sentences create paragraphs, sometimes paragraphs quicken and begin to breathe. Stephen King. Writing a novel is a daunting task if you've never written one before. It's hard to write even a single paragraph, let alone write 200 or 300 pages that will capture the attention of the reader and keep them reading until the last page. What's worse, after all this effort, you'll probably realize that your novel, when compared to a widely acclaimed best-selling novel, is only good for kindling. What you fail to see is that the author of that best-selling novel most likely has spent a decade or more mastering their craft. They started with words, which then became sentences, paragraphs, and eventually stories. Their first attempts, like those of everybody else, were unsuccessful. It took them hundreds of thousands of words worth of practice to finally write a masterpiece. Building self-discipline is similar to writing a novel. You might consider a disciplined person who always wakes up at 4 in the morning, is physically active every day, eats a healthy diet, is super productive, and is capable of balancing it all with their social life and family obligations as a superhuman. But in reality, this person, like the best-selling novelist, probably started with one simple change and kept building on top of it. Whenever you get discouraged, or feel tired by how far you still have to go to accomplish your goals, remind yourself that everybody who has built self-discipline had to go through the same process, starting with little changes which then turned into habits, which then led to big lifestyle changes and identity shifts, and eventually, into successes. Day 11, on self-discipline and talent. Self-discipline without talent can often achieve astounding results, whereas talent without self-discipline inevitably dooms itself to failure. Sidney J. Harris. When you look at some of the most successful high performers, it might be tempting to say that they were born this way. They're talented, end of story. In fact, talent, while undeniably makes life easier, is but one part of the equation. I used to be a shy and fearful person. If you compared me, the awkward outsider, with the most successful guys at school, you could say they were born talented to be popular, liked and as alpha male as you could get, while I didn't have such luck. However, my apparent misfortune turned out to be a source of strength because it provided a spark to introduce big changes in my life. By continuously pushing my comfort zone, I not only overcame social shyness and improved my communication skills, but also developed high self-confidence and overcame other fears in my life. I might not have been born with the talent to be a people person, I still prefer solitude to crowds, but with self-discipline and consistent work, I still achieved astounding results. Next time, before you complain that you don't have a talent for something or weren't born this way, remind yourself that self-discipline, in many situations, can more than make up for a lack of inborn traits. Day 12, on calmness of mind. Calmness of mind is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. It is the result of long and patient effort in self-control. Its presence is an indication of ripened experience, and of a more than ordinary knowledge of the laws and operations of thought. James Allen. If I asked you to show me a symbol of self-discipline, you might think of a Buddhist monk, capable of sitting still for hours on end with an empty mind and only a hint of a smile on his face, content simply to be. Such self-control feels like a superpower in today's busy and fast-moving world, in which distractions lurk at every corner and buzz in every pocket. A person who's capable of maintaining calmness of mind is a rare individual, but fortunately you can also become one, if you're only willing to put in some effort. Implementing some kind of a meditative practice in your weekly schedule will not only help you increase your self-control and develop more patience, but also reduce your stress and make you feel happier. The most common practice to learn how to calm your mind is to meditate. However, meditation isn't the only habit that puts you in a meditative state. The key to developing everyday calmness is focusing your attention on the present moment or on a single activity that you're performing. Engaging in a high-focus sport like yoga, rock climbing, or boxing can be a good way to tap into this state, and so can be something as mundane as gardening, dancing, or knitting. The more often you put yourself in a meditative state, the calmer you'll become in everyday situations. Cultivating calmness will lead to even more self-control, and that will lead to an ever-heightening ability to control your state of mind and prevent emotions from clouding your judgment. Day 13. On what you want now and what you want most. Discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. Unknown. If you're on a diet and decide to eat a piece of chocolate, you're deciding that the instant fleeting pleasure is worth it more than your long-term goals. Obviously, one piece of chocolate doesn't immediately translate to gaining weight, but it sets a precedent that, over the long term, does change your body in such a way that it reflects your preference for what you want now, not what you want most. Each time you make a choice that favors instant gratification, your behavior signals that you have weak motivators. If your reasons why were strong enough, you'd be less likely to go with what you want now. Imagine a straight line. On one end, there's the satisfaction you get from what you want now, and on the other end, there's the satisfaction you'll get from what you want most. If the two ends are close to each other, meaning you only want what you want most a little bit more than what you want now, you'll have a problem delaying gratification. If, on the other hand, the thing you want most is so much more rewarding than what you want now, you'll have an easier time resisting the temptation. To achieve your long-term goals, make sure that the satisfaction you get from what you want most is always much stronger than the satisfaction you can get from what you want now. Day 14, on long-term focus. In order to succeed, you must have a long-term focus. Most of the challenges in our lives come from a short-term focus. Tony Robbins. I spent several long years starting one business after another, deluding myself that it was possible to build a six-figure business in a few months. Each time I failed to reach this goal, I closed one business and started working on another. Sometimes I worked on 2 or 3 ideas at the same time, thinking that one of them would surely succeed. I would have saved myself a lot of time if I had realized that I had a short-term focus, and this attitude had been the very reason why I couldn't accomplish my goals. The moment I switched my mindset to that of being in it for the long haul, things started falling into place. When I look back at my other goals, I struggled in a similar way due to the same reason. In fitness, I wanted to build a well-defined physique as quickly as possible. I frequently reduced my daily caloric intake to levels that were impossible to maintain over the long term. In the end, I would have accomplished my goals more quickly by taking a more sustainable approach that would take me a year or 2 to reach my goal than fooling myself I could reach it in 2 or 3 months. In learning languages, I wanted to learn new words as quickly as possible and soon found myself discouraged from looking at even one more word. I wanted to learn a few dozen words a day, but in the end I would have accomplished more with a routine of learning just 5 to 10 words a day but maintained and used over years, not just weeks or months. Analyze your goals and how you approach them. Replace short-term oriented behaviors with those that show that you're in it for the long haul. Self-discipline isn't limited to rejecting a cake or sticking to an exercise habit. You also need self-discipline to maintain a long-term focus in all of your endeavors. Week 3. Day 15, on constant improvement. Knowledge has to be improved, challenged, and increased constantly, or it vanishes. Peter Drucker. Just like knowledge, you can't take self-discipline for granted. Unfortunately, being a self-disciplined person isn't a one-and-done kind of thing. Once you have learned how to live that way, you can still lose it if you don't consistently strengthen it by setting new challenges and rejecting instant gratification in favor of bigger future rewards. Never assume that you're disciplined enough. There's always a new area in which you can improve your self-control and further expand your comfort zone. For example, regular exercise poses no challenge for my self-discipline. In order to strengthen it, I need to set bigger and bigger exercise-related challenges for myself. Instead of focusing on fitness, I can also find a new area in which my discipline is lacking, such as developing more patience when dealing with other people, and focus on improving it until it's no longer a test for my resolve. Such consistent practice ensures that you're at least maintaining your level of self-control, and ideally always getting better at it. Day 16, on self-reliance. A man then must stand erect, not be kept erect by others. Marcus Aurelius. There's no doubt that surrounding yourself with people who support your goals is helpful. It's easier to exercise with a friend, diet along with your spouse, or belong to a community of frugal people. However, as Marcus Aurelius says, you need to beware of relying too much on others. If the only reason why you exercise is because you're doing it with a friend, the moment they drop it, you'll likely revert to the old ways, too. If you're on a diet only because you want to lose weight to attract this beautiful friend of a friend, the moment you learn they're in a relationship or aren't interested in you, your self-control will be gone. If you're productive at work only because you're afraid of your boss, how likely will you be to exhibit productivity when they aren't around? Your motivators should always start with you and your own resolve to make changes. External support can be valuable, but just like a person recovering from an injury isn't fully recovered if they can't stand without a crutch, you aren't self-disciplined enough unless you can still stick to your resolutions even without the help of other people. Day 17, on rising from the ashes of failure. A setback has often cleared the way for greater prosperity. Many things have fallen only to rise to more exalted heights. Seneca the Younger. No matter how self-disciplined you are, there's no escaping the fact that sometimes you'll stumble. Perhaps you'll eat a piece of a cake instead of a salad. Maybe you'll skip a workout out of laziness. It's possible that when your efforts result in a failure, you'll lose the self-discipline to continue and revert back to your old undesirable habits. It's all par for the course, and the sooner you accept it, the easier it will be to handle the setbacks once they occur. However, don't consider your failures a useless waste of time and energy. A failure can often present new opportunities or lead to important realizations. I failed to learn how to play tennis despite putting considerable amount of time, energy, and money into it. However, this made me realize that I wanted to concentrate on rock climbing, and the failure with tennis cleared the way for dramatic improvements in my climbing performance. When discouraged, remember that all struggles present opportunities that, given enough time, you can convert into successes or lessons that will aid you in other areas of life. Day 18, on higher standards. Hold yourself responsible for a higher standard than anybody else expects of you. Never excuse yourself. Never pity yourself. Be a hard master to yourself and be lenient to everybody else. Henry Ward Beecher. The only standards that should concern you are your own standards. If you act in accordance with the standards of the majority of people, you'll be overweight, unfit, unhealthy, lazy, hating your job, not having enough time for your family, and in debt. I sometimes get flack for my goals. You're already slim. Why do you still watch your diet? Why do you save so much money? You should live it up. Can't you live like a normal person, instead of waking up at 5 a.m. and going to sleep as early as 8 p.m.? By the standards of the person criticizing me, I should have stopped improving myself a long time ago. According to my standards, the growth should never end. I always hold myself responsible for a higher standard, and this allows me to maintain success-friendly habits in my life and achieve even more success. If you allow yourself to have low standards, how are you supposed to ever achieve excellence? Exhibiting self-control is one of the most powerful demonstrations of having high standards. Letting fleeting emotions and urges control your life, as most people do, is a surefire path to mediocrity. Day 19, on fighting well. The important thing in the Olympic Games is not to win, but to take part. The important thing in life is not triumph, but the struggle. The essential thing is not to have conquered, but to have fought well. Pierre de Coubertin. Nobody will ever give you any grades for your level of self-discipline. There's no finish line and there's no podium for the winners. The only purpose of building self-discipline is to conquer yourself, your own urges, your own weaknesses, and your own self-sabotaging behaviors. It's easy to forget this fact and assume that when you reach your goals you're done. In fact, the moment you make your dreams come true isn't the most important moment. It's important, no doubt, but without the process leading to it, in itself it means little. The most important moments are the moments of struggle, when you're striving to fight even when you can barely stand and the whole world is spinning around you. It's this very act that proves your mettle and showers you with life-encompassing benefits, not the act of winning in itself. Whenever you find yourself frustrated that you're still a long way from the finish line, remember that it's right now, at this very moment, that you're collecting the biggest rewards. It's the struggle in itself that improves you and makes you a more successful person. Day 20, on taking small steps. We should discipline ourselves in small things, and from there progress to things of greater value. If you have a headache, practice not cursing. Don't curse every time you have an earache. And I'm not saying that you can't complain, only don't complain with your whole being. Epictetus. Rome wasn't built in a day, and you won't build self-discipline overnight. If you've never been particularly disciplined, start small with easy challenges and then build on top of them. Epictetus suggests a simple exercise of not complaining when you feel unwell. To make the first step even easier, he says that you don't even have to immediately stop complaining at all, just stop complaining with your whole being. Could you do it just for today? Once you successfully go one day without complaining with your whole being, how about 2 days? 3 days? A week? A month? Could you then add other little challenges and consistently strengthen your willpower? Other simple practices you can implement to begin building more self-discipline include resisting the temptation to yell in anger when another driver does something that irks you. Eating just slightly less than you'd like to eat, like 1 square of a chocolate or 1 potato chip less. Working for just 1 minute longer when you're ready to call it a day. Work on several such little challenges and soon you'll gain more self-control and be able to progress to bigger changes. Day 21, on the importance of habits. Success is actually a short race, a sprint fueled by discipline just long enough for habit to kick in and take over. Gary Keller. Habits are like magical powers. The moment they kick in, you no longer need more than perhaps a modicum of self-discipline every now and then to continue performing the same action on a regular basis. What originally was extremely difficult to do is now something you largely do automatically, with little thought or willpower. When something becomes a part of your routine, resistance drops to nearly zero. The challenging part is forming a new habit. Research suggests that it takes anywhere from 18 to 254 days 21 to form a new habit, with 66 days being the average time, not 21 days, as the common knowledge goes. When working on your goals, remind yourself that it's the first months that will be the hardest. Once the proper habits kick in, things will get easier. Remember that in the long term, only habits and their subsequent permanent changes in lifestyle and identity can ensure lasting success. Consequently, it's key to think in terms of lifelong routines. As long as you're jumping from one 2-week diet to another instead of establishing new nutritional habits, you're destined to regain weight. As long as you're switching between different 6-week workout programs to lose some weight and not thinking of exercise as a permanent part of your weekly routine, sooner or later, you'll revert to inactivity. Analyze your goals and assess whether your plans employ self-discipline to help you build a habit or if you're using self-control as a means of temporarily sustaining an impermanent change. Week 4. Day 22, on self-discipline as freedom. Self-discipline is a form of freedom. Freedom from laziness and lethargy, freedom from the expectations and demands of others, freedom from weakness and fear or doubt. Self-discipline allows a pitcher to feel his individuality, his inner strength, his talent. He is master of, rather than a slave to, his thoughts and emotions. H. A. Dorfman. Changing the way you think about self-discipline can help you become more self-disciplined. If you think about it in terms of deprivation and suffering, guess what? You'll never find enjoyment in personal growth, and most likely will soon give up on your endeavors. On the other hand, a person who thinks of self-discipline as a form of freedom will welcome opportunities to practice his or her self-control. When facing temptations and fighting hard to not let them enslave you, remember that through letting go of them, you aren't losing anything substantial. The freedom to be a master of your thoughts and emotions is ultimately worth more than any temporary gratification, of which you're depriving yourself. Day 23, on disciplined education. To read a newspaper is to refrain from reading something worthwhile. The natural laziness of the mind tempts one to eschew authors who demand a continuous effort of intelligence. The first discipline of education must therefore be to refuse resolutely to feed the mind with canned chatter. Aleister Crowley. The way you get information can affect your self-discipline. By getting your news from just one source and blindly believing it, you run the risk of mental laziness. After all, why think about what the provided news really means or whether it's even true in the first place? It's the job of the newspaper or news site, isn't it? Take advantage of the opportunity to improve your self-discipline by exposing yourself to other points of view and thinking for yourself. It takes work, and questioning your beliefs is uncomfortable, which results in a great exercise for your self-discipline. Another risk lies in defaulting to easy entertainment or avoiding difficult topics. While there's nothing wrong in reading easy books to relax, you miss out if you stay away from more demanding and complex works. Reading thought-provoking and/or long titles conditions your brain to eschew mental laziness. When a book provides an intellectual challenge and you keep going, you train yourself to stay with problems for as long as necessary to figure them out instead of giving up, and that's a habit that will surely help you in other endeavors, too. Day 24, on happiness through self-discipline. It is one of the strange ironies of this strange life that those who work the hardest, who subject themselves to the strictest discipline, who give up certain pleasurable things in order to achieve a goal, are the happiest. When you see 20 or 30 people line up for a distance race in some meet, don't pity them, don't feel sorry for them. Better envy them instead. Bruce Hamilton. For a person who has never tested their self-discipline over a long period of time, it's hard to believe that giving up pleasure can lead to immense happiness. Most certainly, it doesn't feel that way when you're fighting against the craving for chocolate, compare exercise to torture, or feel sad that you have to set money aside and can't spend it on this new cool gadget. However, in the long haul, based on my personal experience, subjecting yourself to a strict discipline does lead to a happier life, and it can be a powerful motivator in the moments of doubt. Let me explain why. Firstly, as we talked about in day 1, living your life the hard way makes it easier. People who voluntarily expose themselves to challenges are more capable of handling unforeseen hardships. Moreover, giving up certain pleasures, such as unhealthy food and sitting all day in front of the TV, can lead to immense improvements in one's well-being. Maintaining a healthy weight and beneficial nutritional habits doesn't just lead to physical improvements, it also affects self-esteem, reduces the risk for depression, and improves your body image. 24. Giving up on pleasurable things, such as spending money without control, can also help you avoid crushing problems in the future. Today it might be inconvenient that you can't spend your entire salary, but tomorrow your savings can save you from bankruptcy or pay for an urgent medical intervention. Lastly, self-discipline is in itself a manifestation of your higher being, and is connected with nobler strivings. A human being, reduced to its primal form, has little ability for self-control. Operating in scarcity mode and left to its own devices, your primal brain will stuff your body until you won't be able to walk. It will make you cheat on your partner with every passing stranger. It will assume that every step outside the comfort zone is a danger, and so you'll never grow. Exerting self-control is working against the dominance of your primal brain. You forego primal urges in order to reach bigger and more important goals or to cultivate values that are important to you. You can live your life in a way that is congruent with who you are as a deeply complex human being, not a mere animal with the ability to reason. This leads to experiencing a wide variety of experiences that life has to offer. Many of them are immensely more gratifying than merely satisfying the most basic human needs. Day 25, on starting today. Don't wait for tomorrow to do something you can do today. Spanish proverb. Have you been pondering starting on a new goal but are still procrastinating on it? Come up with the easiest, simplest, and quickest action you can take today to initiate momentum. If you want to stop eating sugar, eliminate all chocolate bars from your house or choose one day a week during which you won't eat sugar in any form. Take it from there, step by step. If you want to start exercising on a regular basis, do 3 push-ups and 3 squats now or any other super quick exercise. Tomorrow, do 1 more repetition. Find a more suitable workout once you establish the basic habit of some exercise, even if it's just a few push-ups a day. If you want to start saving money, take just $1 out of your wallet and put it in a jar. Yes, it won't change anything today, but if you add $1 for the next 3 months, you'll have saved $100 and established a habit of saving. There's no excuse to not take any of those simple actions now and finally break the chain of procrastination. Don't overthink it and don't obsess over the future. Take care of establishing a tiny habit today and take it from there. Day 26, on the long-term consequences of your choices. Whenever you are presented with a choice, ask yourself which option you would prefer to have taken in 10 years. Eric D. Kennedy. Self-discipline is largely dependent on your ability to look into the future and imagine yourself not having taken the difficult choice today. If you paint the mental picture with enough detail, you won't be able to bear the thought of letting the situation remain the same or getting worse. A simple exercise of asking yourself which option you would prefer to have taken in 10 years can help you avoid succumbing to temptations. And let's not fool ourselves, it probably won't work every time, but even if it doesn't work every time, at least it will make you pause sometimes. Let's imagine that you're torn between buying a new piece of furniture you don't really need but like a lot, or saving that money for your retirement. In 10 years, would you rather have a crumbling piece of furniture you rarely use or, thanks to the power of compounding, twice the amount you're now pondering on spending? For this technique to work, you need to consider your failure to stick to your resolutions not as a once-off event, but a precedent that can ruin your long-term progress. Otherwise, this technique won't work. For example, if you're on a diet and are tempted to eat this awesome chocolate chip cookie, if you tell yourself that it's simply this one time, obviously in a 10-year time frame it means nothing. And it's true, one cookie eaten today won't ruin your diet for the next decade. However, it's not about eating this specific cookie. It's about the precedent it sets and a possible pattern of cheating during a diet that might develop from making this decision. In 10 years, would you prefer to have developed a habit of eating cookies while on a diet or established a habit of not eating cookies at all, or only on special occasions? Day 27, on following the wrong path. If something scares you in an excited way, something that gives you energy, that's a good sign. But if something is making you miserable and draining your energy, please stop. Life is telling you that is not the path for you. Derek Sivers. When you think about pursuing your goals, you might be tempted to think that the process will be long, arduous, and painful. While it's good to assume that it won't be a walk in the park, there's a danger in equating the journey with being miserable. Self-discipline is powerful as long as you apply it to the goals you care about, the ones that, even when they are difficult to accomplish, energize you. If, as Derek Sivers points out, your goal is draining your energy, chances are it's better to stop. For example, I was working on building a company in the software as a service industry. I know nothing about programming, and this business not only required some technical knowledge, but also relied heavily on phone sales, something I hate to the core. My goal to build a successful company was of immense importance to me, but the path I chose was making me so miserable that I hated waking up every morning. I could have pressed on, tapping into the deepest reservoirs of my willpower, but ultimately life was telling me that this path wasn't for me. I made the right decision to cut my losses and sell the business. Day 28, on living in offensive mode. Life is an ongoing process of choosing between safety, out of fear and need for defense, and risk. For the sake of progress and growth, make the growth choice a dozen times a day. Abraham Maslow. If you're reading this book, you're most likely living in relative abundance, whether you agree with that perception or not. You have access to some kind of an electronical device for reading, which means you have some disposable income, which means you don't live in extreme poverty. You also most likely don't live in a native tribe somewhere in the jungle or in a small village in the war zone, where survival is a daily challenge. Consequently, you don't have to live in defense. The negative consequences of your acts, when compared to people who aren't as lucky as you, are in most cases negligible. You can afford to venture out into the world without the risk that the enemy tribe will kill you. You can risk launching a side business because even if it fails, you'll still have a secure job and perhaps even some savings. You can go on a diet and temporarily restrict caloric intake. I assure you that you won't starve to death. Analyze the decisions you've taken during the past week and ask yourself whether they were motivated by the need for defense and safety or by the prospect of progress and growth. Make sure that the great majority of your decisions favors some smart risk-taking instead of letting the fear stop you dead in your tracks. Week 5. Day 29, on avoiding effort. There is just something wrong with getting up every day and moving through your existence with the least possible effort. If your expectations are always those of someone content to live without physical challenge, then when it comes time for mental, moral, or emotional challenge, you fail to meet it because you are out of practice. Mark Rippetto. I consider physical exercise a fundamental habit for every person who wants to build self-discipline and achieve their goals. Granted, not everyone has the health required for strenuous physical activity, but there's always some kind of effort you can undertake to move your body in a beneficial way. In addition to obvious health benefits, physical activity provides another immense benefit. It's an exercise in exposing yourself to effort and challenge for the sake of bettering yourself. As Mark Rippetoe states in the quote, "Living your life without physical challenges makes you rusty when it comes to dealing with other types of challenges, including mental, moral, or emotional challenges that sometimes require more strength than a fitness workout does." How often do you avoid effort when it would have been beneficial to face it? If you're content to live an easy, effortless life, are you also content to live your life without ever realizing your full potential as a human being that has evolved to thrive in a challenging environment? Day 30, on looking like a fool. You have to look like a fool while you're looking for answers you don't have. Dan Waldschmidt. A frequently overlooked aspect of building self-discipline is the fact that if you want to rise above mediocrity, you need to be fine with the fact that you'll undoubtedly make a fool of yourself every now and then. Perhaps you tell all of your friends that you're going to build a business, but the business goes bankrupt and you lose all of your savings. Maybe you set a goal to harness the power of your self-discipline to learn public speaking, even though you're terrified of standing in front of the crowds, and then deliver a less than stellar performance. This is normal, you have to fail your way to the success, but for many people, it's a blow they can't withstand. They might be so harmed by it that they'll do anything to avoid future humiliation, including giving up on their goals. Failure, rejection, and humiliation are anything but pleasant. However, the ability to withstand it and keep going is one of the key differences between successful individuals and those who fail to make their dreams come true. As disagreeable as it can be, accept that occasionally looking like a fool is a part of the process of becoming a successful person. Fortunately, the more often you voluntarily expose yourself to rejection, humiliation, or failure, the easier it will be to handle the feelings they generate. Day 31, on being normal. To be normal is the ideal aim for the unsuccessful, for all those who are still below the general level of adaptation. But for people of more than average ability, people who never found it difficult to gain successes and to accomplish their share of the world's work, for them the moral compulsion to be nothing but normal signifies the bed of Procrustes, deadly and insupportable boredom, a hell of sterility and hopelessness. Carl Jung. There's nothing normal in building self-discipline. Most people avoid all kinds of discomfort and effort. They don't want to experience personal growth because it interferes with them stuffing themselves with French fries, wasting countless hours in front of TV, spending money they don't have on things they don't need, lollygagging at work, and cutting corners whenever they can. If you want to join the minority of people who do possess self-control and strive to strengthen it even further, you'll be considered weird. This means that you need to prepare yourself for potential ridicule, being frowned upon, and not being understood. It might be hard at first to face so much adversity when all you want to do is to improve yourself. To overcome this situation, get the following fact at the forefront of your mind: normal is the ideal for the mediocre, exceptional, or, in the words of the unsuccessful, weird, is the ideal for the high achievers and trailblazers. Every time you feel out of sync with the rest of the world, remember that there are other people like you. During the challenging times, when you're stumbling, remind yourself that even when you're failing, you're still forging your own path, something that the vast majority of people will never do. You can enjoy the fruits of your success in a way that they will never experience, and that's why it's worth it to be exceptional. Be exceptional. Day 32, on cultivating self-discipline like a plant. Virtue is not a mushroom that springeth up of itself in one night when we are asleep, or regard it not, but a delicate plant that groweth slowly and tenderly, needing much pains to cultivate it, much care to guard it, much time to mature it, in our untoward soil, in this world's unkindly weather. Isaac Barrow. If self-discipline were like a mushroom that springs up of itself without the need for a gardener, everybody would possess it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, it's more like a plant that you need to constantly cultivate, or else it withers. Some people believe that one either possesses a green thumb or not, as if one person were born with an inborn talent to care for plants and another not. In reality, the person with the supposed green thumb is simply more attentive to their plants. They make sure their plants have everything they need to thrive and regularly check up on them to make sure they stay healthy. Think of self-discipline in the same way. You planted seeds the moment you decide it's time to stop coasting through life and prioritize long-term rewards over instant gratification. However, this moment is just the very beginning. As in the case of planting the seed for a new flowering plant, there's a lot of time and energy you'll still need to invest to make it bloom. If you want to have a beautiful plant, you can't water it occasionally or move it from one place to another every other week. Ask yourself, what kind of a gardener am I for my own self-discipline? If your self-control were a plant, how would it look based on how you've been cultivating it the past years? Day 33, on things you can't rush. The bearing of a child takes 9 months, no matter how many women are assigned. Fred Brooks. Patience and self-discipline are close cousins. If you want to reject instant gratification for the sake of accomplishing your long-term goals, it might take months or years before you receive your big compensation. Without patience, you'll get nowhere. While sometimes you can force results to come more quickly by pushing yourself harder and being as diligent as you can during the process, oftentimes things take time and there's no way to rush them, no matter how many resources you apply. Like pregnancy, some things follow a natural schedule you can't control. If you fail to identify which things cannot be rushed, you might misapply the power of self-discipline and instead of achieving them more quickly, fail to achieve them at all. For example, a body has a natural limit of how much body fat it can burn during a week without breaking down your muscle. If you try to rush the process by starving yourself, the most likely end result is an unplanned cheat week that will not only take you back to square one, but most likely add some additional body fat to your frame. Even with things that are difficult to measure, such as learning to control your mind so that you can eventually radiate optimism, you can't force yourself to change overnight. Rewiring your brain takes time, and it doesn't matter how much time you spend meditating or reading books about emotional control, a process that is so profound takes time. Generally speaking, if it has taken you years or decades to develop a negative trait, don't expect that you can reverse it within weeks or months. Approach such undertakings with the belief that you'll do your best, but that you won't get discouraged or frustrated if the process is slow. It would be as futile as a woman complaining that pregnancy lasts 9 months. Day 34, on enlightenment. Before enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water. After enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water. A Zen saying, attributed to Xinxin Ming. It's tempting to believe that, after enough time passes, suddenly you'll attain enlightenment and acquire permanent, unbreakable self-control. In reality, there's no sudden awakening that will happen if you deny temptations for long enough. Just like today you're consciously choosing to reject a chocolate bar so you can enjoy an attractive physique a year from now you will still need to reject a chocolate bar to maintain the body you attained. There are no secret powers that self-disciplined people have somehow attained that give them magical powers to resist temptations. Despite having built a healthy, fit physique, I still fight and sometimes fail to overcome temptations. I still need to make sure my plates are full of satiating, healthy foods so that I don't fill them later on with something less than healthy, yet again. I still need to monitor how much I eat and avoid places where I'm likely to overeat. I still do full-day fasts every now and then to practice self-control that is associated with hunger. No matter the challenge, I still mostly use the same strategies I'd been using prior to accomplishing my goals. The actions don't change. What changes is the person performing them. For example, rejecting chocolate today may feel like the greatest punishment in the world. A year from now, rejecting chocolate is simply a fact of life. You want to stay in top shape, so you don't stuff yourself with chocolate on a daily basis. It will still require self-control, but as long as you diligently exercise your willpower muscle, the temptation will most likely be easier to overcome. And in the end, that's what building self-discipline gives you, an easier life, through voluntarily choosing to live it the hard way. Day 35, on the value of difficulty. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. Thomas Paine. Easy successes may be pleasant, but if they're the only successes you achieve, you'll come to expect quick, effortless results. Then, when life hits you hard with a difficult challenge, you'll lack the mental toughness to overcome it. Moreover, you'll never appreciate the easy successes as much as the ones that required blood, sweat, and tears. Does it mean that you should reject easy successes and seek the most difficult ways to accomplish your goals? Of course not. However, you should make sure that you don't deliberately avoid hardships. Resist the temptation to set your aims low. Scoring exclusively easy wins might feel good, but you're limiting your potential that way. Over the long term, make sure that you always have at least one big, ambitious, and demanding goal in life, as that's where the power of self-discipline shines, where most personal growth happens, and which delivers the greatest feeling of having accomplished something worth doing. Week 6. Day 36, on pushing your limits step by step. That day, for no particular reason, I decided to go for a little run. So I ran to the end of the road. And when I got there, I thought maybe I'd run to the end of town. And when I got there, I thought maybe I'd just run across Greenbow County. And I figured, since I run this far, maybe I'd just run across the great state of Alabama. And that's what I did. I ran clear across Alabama. For no particular reason, I just kept on going. I ran clear to the ocean. And when I got there, I figured, since I'd gone this far, I might as well turn around, just keep on going. When I got to another ocean, I figured, since I'd gone this far, I might as well just turn back, keep right on going. Forrest Gump. There's no law stating that if you want to build self-discipline, you need to immediately wake up at 4 in the morning, eat nothing but vegetables and fruits, work productively for 12 hours, 7 days a week, and abstain from every pleasure, trying to mimic the life of a medieval ascetic. Setting aside the fact that most of these habits are not necessary to become self-disciplined, self-control isn't built in one day. You're building it step by step, starting from an easy challenge, and then building on top of it. Don't feel anxious or guilty that you begin your exercise plan with a 5-minute walk or that you commence your new nutrition plan with a resolution that you'll add 1 vegetable and subtract 1 candy bar a day. Try it, see what happens, and if it works out, set a bigger challenge. Nothing else is needed to begin the journey to a new you. Day 37, on initial resistance. It is easier to resist at the beginning than at the end. Leonardo da Vinci. To avoid procrastination at work, I use a rule I like to call the 0-second rule. The moment I realize that I'm wasting my time to avoid work, I immediately stop whatever unproductive thing I'm doing and start working. If I let myself ponder whether I want to start working or not, my resistance will only grow, and soon, it will be so difficult to overcome that I may fail to accomplish anything productive for the rest of the day. This trick works because, like Leonardo da Vinci said, resistance is greatest at the beginning. Once you start performing an unpleasant task and gain some momentum, it's easier to stick to the task than to give up and return to procrastination. Whenever you catch yourself putting off something unpleasant, act right away and deal with it now. The sooner you act, the sooner you'll be done with it. For example, I always wash the cookware I use to cook my dinner before I eat my meal. This way I can eat my dinner without the unpleasant thought in the back of my mind that I'll not only have to wash the dishes, but also the pots and pans I used for cooking. Small habits like that can help establish a habit of choosing to do the hard things now instead of letting all the hard tasks accumulate like a backlog at work. When you adopt this habit, you'll greatly reduce the impact of procrastination on your life and enjoy more tranquility to boot. Day 38, on moderation as a good thing. Monks, these two extremes ought not to be practiced by one who has gone forth from the household life. What are the two? There is addiction to indulgence of sense pleasures, which is low, coarse, the way of ordinary people, unworthy, and unprofitable, and there is addiction to self-mortification, which is painful, unworthy, and unprofitable. Avoiding both these extremes, the Tathagata has realized the middle path. It gives vision, gives knowledge, and leads to calm, to insight, to enlightenment, and to nibbana. Gautama Buddha. When you set firm resolutions to improve yourself, you might be tempted to push your limits well outside of what you're capable of doing. Ambitiousness is a virtue, but there's danger involved in going from one extreme to another. If you're currently struggling to be productive, don't force yourself to work 16 hours a day. If you're struggling to control your appetite, don't impose a week-long fast. If you can't find it in you to choose the stairs over the elevator, don't expect that you'll maintain a workout plan that requires you to work out every single day. Find the middle path, stick to it for at least several weeks, and then, based on the results you get, decide whether you can further stretch your limits or require more time before advancing. As much as I believe in pushing your boundaries and exploring the extremes, you don't need to put yourself through mortification to achieve good results. Subjecting yourself to extreme hardships has some merits, but over the long term it's unsustainable, if not downright dangerous. Remember that there should be moderation in all things, including moderation itself. Sometimes a more extreme approach is needed for a short period of time, and sometimes it's beneficial to set your goals lower. In whatever you do, seek to not spend too much time loafing around, but also make sure that your life hasn't turned into the life of a self-flagellating ascetic. Day 39, on moderation as a bad thing. Sometimes moderation is a bad counselor. Fausto Cercignani. In yesterday's entry, we talked about moderation being a good thing. Today we'll approach the topic from a different perspective. Some people use moderation as an excuse to not do their best, often mistaking mediocrity for moderation. Let's call it a day. I've already worked 5 minutes more than yesterday. You gotta stay in balance. Let's stick with the same weight for the next 5 workouts, even though I can easily lift it. Moderation is key. I've already gone down 2 sizes. I guess I'm still a bit overweight, but let's not forget that going to the extreme is a bad thing. If you use moderation as an excuse not to push your limits, you're mistaking moderation with mediocrity. If you're trying to lift a weight that you can barely lift off the floor, some moderation will be good for you. If you're lifting it like it's a feather and telling yourself you're still doing great because at least you're exercising, you're letting mediocrity limit your growth. Sticking to easy things that are well within your grasp isn't moderation. Equating mediocrity with moderation largely comes down to having low standards. A person who thinks that exercising once a week is incredible because most of his friends only exercise with a TV remote will most likely stop challenging themselves well before it would be wise to remember about moderation. That's not to say that you should compare yourself to other people, compare yourself to yourself from the past. If today, a year since you started to exercise, you're still performing the same exercises with little to no improvement, perhaps you've confused moderation with self-congratulation. Moreover, as we've already covered when talking about moderation as a good thing, you should also apply moderation to moderation itself. It's impossible to always follow the middle path. Sometimes you'll zig and sometimes you'll zag. One day might spend 12 hours working on an important project so that you can spend the entire next day with your family. There's nothing unbalanced in it, as long as you move from an extreme in one thing, like work, to an extreme in another, like family, without staying too long in either one. Day 40, on talking versus doing. It is better to practice a little than talk a lot. A Zen saying, attributed to Muzo Soseki. Announcing to all of your friends, family members, and colleagues that you're going to change and going deep into details how you're going to do it is useless at best and sabotaging at worst. Firstly, not everyone will be happy to hear that you want to improve yourself because it will make it painfully obvious that they're lazy or don't have as much courage as you do. Instead of support, you can receive criticism that might make you less likely to act upon your dreams. Secondly, research suggests that announcing your plans makes you less motivated to accomplish them. By talking about your plans, you get the erroneous satisfaction that you've already taken action to change yourself and consequently, you're less likely to take real action. If you want to tell your friends about your new goal, choose a person whom you know will support you. In addition, instead of telling them in a self-congratulatory way that you're finally going to achieve your dreams, ask them to hold you accountable if you don't honor your resolution. Day 41, on arrogance. Receive wealth or prosperity without arrogance, and be ready to let it go. Marcus Aurelius. Never take self-discipline for granted or assume that if you can control your urges, you're now invincible. Humility plays an important role in helping you maintain self-control. An arrogant person will be more likely to unnecessarily test their willpower, which will eventually lead to their downfall. This happens because of the restraint bias, the tendency for people to overestimate how capable they are of controlling impulsive behaviors. Research shows that people who had an inflated belief in their self-control overexposed themselves to temptations, such as recovering smokers putting themselves in situations tempting them to smoke, which increased the risk of a relapse. Assume that your self-discipline is like prosperity. It's possible that it will stay with you for a long time, but it's also possible that it will disappear. Consequently, you'll work harder to keep it in your life. If it does go away when you make some mistakes, you'll accept it with more tranquility and be more likely to regain it quickly. Day 42, on diligent practice. You can know how to win through strategy with the long sword, but it cannot be clearly explained in writing. You must practice diligently in order to understand how to win. Miyamoto Musashi. Reading hundreds of books, blog posts, articles, and watching countless videos on self-discipline isn't going to automatically reprogram your brain so that one day you'll wake up with the self-control of a samurai. The intention behind this book is to offer you quick, interesting tidbits related to self-discipline that you can easily act upon. No matter how detailed my writings are, you'll always learn more by taking one little action than by reading 10 of my books or rereading the same book over and over again. For example, I can tell you that the greatest amount of willpower is needed during the first few minutes of an uncomfortable task, such as taking a cold shower. Once a couple of minutes pass, your body will adapt to the challenge and it gets easier to handle. But that's just me talking. Go and actually take an ice-cold shower. Experience the wild emotions, start shivering, feel the overpowering temptation to turn on hot water, and wonder if you can last even a second longer, and then, 2 or 3 minutes later, feel your body start to relax, with the ice-cold water no longer feeling like the worst torture in the world. Then step out the shower feeling, elated that you managed to overcome your weakness of will. The next time you face an uncomfortable situation, tap into your real-world experience, not mere words read in a book, to realize that, just like with an ice-cold shower, you can adapt to this situation as well. Week 7. Day 43, on making continuous efforts. Genius is often only the power of making continuous efforts. The line between failure and success is so fine that we scarcely know when we pass it, so fine that we are often on the line and do not know it. How many a man has thrown up his hands at a time when a little more effort, a little more patience, would have achieved success? As the tide goes clear out, so it comes clear in. In business, sometimes prospects may seem darkest when really they are on the turn. A little more persistence, a little more effort, and what seemed hopeless failure may turn to glorious success. There is no failure except in no longer trying. There is no defeat except from within, no really insurmountable barrier save our own inherent weakness of purpose. Elbert Hubbard. I'm an avid rock climber. In rock climbing, particularly when climbing long routes, your forearms can get pumped to such an extent that you can no longer hold onto the rock. Climbers afraid of failing will often ask their belayer to take in the rope so that they can rest and try again with renewed strength. While this strategy is good for learning how to climb a difficult route, sometimes it costs a climber an on-site, a clean ascent with no prior practice of the route, or a red point, completing a route without resting on the rope, because they give up too quickly, right after they start feeling overpowering discomfort. Even when you can barely hold onto the wall, often you can still perform 1 or 2 moves more, and those moves may be enough to upgrade your position to a rest stance where you can safely recharge and continue climbing without resting on the rope. It's the same with many other areas of life. You believe that you can't go on any longer, that your self-discipline has run out and it's time to throw up your hands in defeat, while in reality, persisting just a little bit longer is all that separates you from success. The next time you feel like giving up, persuade yourself to push a little bit longer. Chances are, success is right around the corner. Day 44, on optimism. Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope. Helen Keller. A positive attitude is essential if you want to build self-discipline. What's the point of denying yourself instant gratification if you don't believe that you'll get a greater compensation for it in the future? If you suffer from pessimism, realize that along with improving your self-control, you'll need to improve your ability to see the world in brighter colors. 3 easy steps you can take today to become more optimistic include: 1. Express gratitude for what you already have. If you can't be happy with what you have today, you won't be happy with what you have tomorrow. 2. Reframe negative events into opportunities and lessons. An event is bad for you only if you decide it is. Think of it as a lesson or an opportunity to change your life, in order to give it a positive meaning. 3. Surround yourself with positive input. If you only read fear-mongering news and hang out with pessimistic grumblers, you'll have a hard time exhibiting optimism. Day 45, on honesty. I hope I shall possess firmness and virtue enough to maintain what I consider the most enviable of all titles, the character of an honest man. George Washington. For many people, one of the hardest challenges for their self-discipline is the resolution to stop lying. We constantly encounter opportunities to lie, wherever we go and whatever we do. It seems it's even socially permissible to lie a little, whether by telling a white lie, making yourself look better on a resume, or tweaking your height, weight, and financial situation on online dating sites. As the old saying goes, honesty is the best policy, and it's also one of the best ways to strengthen your character. It's one thing to deny yourself a piece of cake, and it's a completely different thing to tell the truth when you think it will make you look bad or threaten the relationship you have with someone. Yet, over the long term, the truth always emerges, and if not, it still eats away at your conscience, so why postpone the discomfort you'll eventually feel anyway? Vow to tell the truth no matter the circumstances, except for extreme situations, such as your life being in danger. Please note that being honest doesn't mean that you need to share everything about yourself with other people. That telling them, I don't feel like answering that question, without giving any justifications, it's your right to not explain any of your decisions, is a simple way to remain honest when a person asks you a question you'd normally answer with a lie. Day 46, on looking fear in the face. You gain strength, courage and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. Eleanor Roosevelt. Self-discipline is a lot like dealing with fear. When you face temptations, look them straight in the eye and send them packing. The next time they appear in your life, you'll be able to say to yourself, I managed to overcome them once. I can handle them this time as well. The more times you successfully overcome the temptations, the easier it will be to handle them again. Regular practice will make you less susceptible to temptations and even more likely to ignore them, just like looking fear in the face will make you more likely to act in spite of it. Granted, it's not that with enough experience, you'll become unconditionally self-disciplined, just like you won't one day stop being afraid of anything. Just remember that each situation that tests your resolve is another experience from which you can draw inspiration to overcome future challenging circumstances when they occur. Day 47, on the folly of loafing around. The loafer believes he is enjoying life, but sooner or later he must face disillusion. Fausto Cercignani. Since self-discipline shines in the long term, and often doesn't seem to provide any benefits in the short term, you may be tempted to believe that people who are loafing around have it better. While you're watching your finances like a hawk, they spend money they don't have and show off with all the new cool gadgets. While you're eating a salad and washing it down with a cup of green tea, they're eating a bag of delicious potato chips and gulping down sugary cans of Coke. While you feel like throwing up during your workout from trying to just squeeze out one more rep, they squeeze more mayo out of the bottle to put it on the French fries they gorge on while watching their favorite TV shows. It might seem they have it better, but sooner or later the person exposing himself or herself to discomfort for the sake of achieving their long-term goals will come out on top, while the people loafing around will get to feel the negative consequences of their laziness. Irresponsible spenders will realize they're on the brink of bankruptcy. Potato chip addicts will be diagnosed with diabetes. The inactive TV fans will start taking hypertension medication. You, on the other hand, will look back at your past sacrifices and smile, happy that you've never succumbed to the temptation to take it easy and loaf around. Day 48, on the deadening of the soul. Most of us dread the deadening of the body and will do anything to avoid it. About the deadening of the soul, however, we don't care one iota. Epictetus. It's curious that millions of people all over the world spend countless amounts of money and time to improve their appearance through the use of cosmetics, plastic surgery, expensive clothes, supplements, and other treatments, but spend little to nothing on improving themselves on the inside. It's more important to avoid wrinkles than to prevent negative habits from forming. It's a better investment to fix your sagging cheeks than to learn how to exercise restraint in unnecessary spending. Nobody will comment or even notice your deterioration of mental toughness and a growing preference for complacency over growth, but everybody will praise you for your new clothes. $10 for a book that can change your life is too expensive. $100 for another pair of jeans is a screaming deal. Your spending habits, including spending in the monetary sense and the investment of energy or time, reveal your true priorities. How much do you spend on your external appearance, and how much do you expend on developing your inner world? Is the proportion healthy, or do you find it hard to justify spending for personal growth, but never fail to invest in your superficial appearance? Day 49 on obeying lusts. Bad men obey their lusts as servants obey their masters. Diogenes Laertius. A forbidden fruit is the sweetest. If it weren't so pleasant to submit to your urges, nobody would ever struggle with self-discipline. However, notwithstanding how much pleasure it can bring, it's important to see the temptation for what it is, your enemy on the path toward freedom. Obeying your lusts enslaves you, while rejecting them increases your freedom. The reward you'll get for not succumbing to your temptations will more than make up for the price you pay today for missing out on the instant gratification. Self-disciplined people may appear to some as if they were the ones being enslaved. After all, they're the ones whose lives are so limited, they don't get to eat junk food, they follow a strict routine, deliberately expose themselves to discomfort, and reject what society considers the spice of life: gluttony, laziness, and engaging in other vices. What the critics fail to see is that, through the rejection of those temptations, the self-disciplined become the masters of their lives. They serve the goals chosen by themselves instead of fleeting, spontaneous temptations. They choose to forego temporary satisfactions for deeper, more lasting ones later on. In the meantime, in the long haul, the people who fail to control their urges, or rather, don't even try to control them, fail to control their lives, manipulated by the temptations like a marionette. Week 8. Day 50, on not resting on your laurels. I think if you do something and it turns out pretty good, then you should go do something else wonderful, not dwell on it for too long. Just figure out what's next. Steve Jobs. To be human is to grow, challenge yourself, and strive to always become better. It's important to celebrate your triumphs, but dwelling on them for too long can lead to resting on your laurels and jeopardizing your future growth. After you're done celebrating your success, figure out what your next challenge is. How can you take your life to an even higher level? For example, if you've successfully lost weight, now is a good time to gain some muscle or improve your nutritional habits. If you've put your financial life in order by building a small nest egg, it's a good opportunity to take it one step further and work on achieving financial independence. Treat wonderful accomplishments as opportunities to accomplish even more wonderful things, and not as permission to become lazy. Day 51, on taking action, in spite of potential criticism. People who say it cannot be done should not interrupt those who are doing it. Unknown. Some people don't want to start exercising because they're afraid that others will laugh at their inability to perform a push-up or run for more than 60 seconds without losing their breath. They might be afraid that their friends will talk behind their backs, taking bets when they're going to fail. Thousands of people all over the world dream of entrepreneurship, but are afraid to take the first step because if their business fails, their ego will suffer too hard of a blow. Self-discipline isn't only about forcing yourself to do things that are unpleasant for the sake of long-term goals. It's also about resisting the temptation to stay mediocre in order to avoid criticism. True, staying in your comfort zone is safe and there's little criticism you'll encounter along the way. However, there's a high price associated with this choice. You won't ever get to change your current situation. Over the long term, how important is it really that some unintelligent meathead smirks at you at the gym when you're struggling to complete a set of push-ups? Is the momentary pain of that really greater than the pain of regret when you realize that another year has passed without you acting on your goals? Day 52, on thinking for yourself. When I meet someone, I consider how normal their life is. I do this not because it's a 100% accurate heuristic on how much I'll respect someone, but because it's damn close. If you have a totally normal life, then there are only two possibilities: you've thought through every aspect of your life and miraculously agree with society on each one, or you don't think at all. I try not to associate with people who don't think. Tynan. Self-discipline is hard to attain, and because it's not common, sooner or later somebody will deem your behaviors abnormal. I maintain a healthy weight and physique, but I still fast for 16 to 20 hours daily, and abstain from food for 36 hours or more every several weeks. My relationship with food is often criticized by other people. If I don't stuff my face with food every 3 hours, then surely I've developed an eating disorder. The norm is to eat often, and if your behavior differs from it, you're weird. However, I do what I consider to be best for me, and I refuse to follow different eating habits merely because it's the most common way of doing things. It's difficult to trust your own judgment when everybody around you is doing something different, but if everything you do is in accordance with society's norms, then what you're going to get is the same results as everybody else does who follows those norms. So what if others think it's weird that you'd rather save money instead of buying a new car every 2 years? You're the one who has less financial stress, even if it costs you a little to reject the temptation to spend money unnecessarily. So what if you're not partying every weekend like everybody else and instead work hard to grow your business? You're the one who will eventually enjoy wealth, while those others will complain about their finances for the rest of their lives. So what if people consider you weird because you go to sleep at 9 and wake up at 5 in the morning, while they stay up until 2 in the morning watching TV shows? It's you who's going to get more done by 10 in the morning than they'll accomplish in the entire week. Trust your own judgment and think for yourself. It's better to suffer from your own choices than waste your life away because you were mindlessly following the herd. Day 53, on having a burning yes inside. You have to decide what your highest priorities are and have the courage pleasantly, smilingly, non-apologetically, to say no to other things. And the way to do that is by having a bigger yes burning inside. Stephen Covey. Without the bigger yes burning inside of you, there's no way you'll continue making the uncomfortable choices over the long term for the sake of your goal. The primary reason why I stuck to entrepreneurship, despite countless failures, was my intention to help my parents build a house in the countryside. It was their dream, and by extension, my dream. This big yes had been burning inside me no matter what was happening with my business. Even after another big defeat, I still knew that I would never lay down my arms in the fight to become able to give them their dream. If you have such a strong yes inside you, you'll also refuse to surrender the fight to achieve your dream. Your burning yes will also help you pinpoint your priorities and disregard distractions. For example, if you decided to save money for the future education of your child, saying no to spending money on things you'd like to have, but don't need, would be much easier than without such a powerful motivator. You would be focused on the long view of where you wanted to be when your child was older. If your biggest dream in life is to become a surgeon, you won't feel apprehensive about declining an invitation for a party because you want to prepare yourself for an important exam. The yes burning inside you would be stronger than the fear of missing out on a few hours spent drinking with your friends. Granted, as we've already discussed, there should be some balance in everything, but generally speaking, you'll do well if you can discover a burning reason why you want to accomplish a given dream and unapologetically say no to anything that might threaten your chances of making it come true. Day 54, on underestimating the long-term approach. We always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10. Don't let yourself be lulled into inaction. Bill Gates. Bill Gates' quote refers to the evolution of personal computing, but the world of self-discipline isn't any different. A staggering number of people give up on their goals just weeks or months into them, discouraged that they still haven't reached their goals or that their results are lackluster. Sorry to have to break it to you, but the world doesn't work that way. With few exceptions, nobody can build a successful business in 6 months, achieve a perfect physique in 3 months, learn a new language in 4 weeks, or become a self-disciplined person overnight. However, the sky is the limit for those who are in it for the long haul. 10 years of dedicated practice can turn anyone into a world-class expert. When you gain momentum, you'll get exponential results. The trick is to stick to your goals long enough for the velocity to accrue. For example, in the first year you might only get your business off the ground, but in its 3rd or 4th year it can explode virtually overnight. What actually happens is not an overnight success, but a process that took place over several years, during which it built upon itself in an exponential way. When you look at my catalog of books, you might be tempted to say that I succeeded right away. Martin's first book became a bestseller, so it's possible to become a best-selling author in a few months. That would be a great example of overestimating what you can achieve in a short period of time. My first book wasn't actually my first book. I'd been writing articles, blog posts, books, etc. for a long time before I started writing about self-discipline. It was a process of well over 10 years that resulted in my becoming a best-selling author. Whenever setting a new goal, take the long-term approach. Unlike the person who assumes that their world can change overnight, be in it for the long haul, and the short-term fluctuations won't make you give up. Day 55, on bearing misfortunes nobly. Remember too on every occasion which leads thee to vexation to apply this principle, not that this is a misfortune, but that to bear it nobly is good fortune. Marcus Aurelius. Hardships are a part of life, and while nobody, with the exception of masochists, enjoys pain, they can be valuable because they present an opportunity for personal growth. I like to say that you discover how deep your self-discipline goes when you struggle, and not when everything goes well. You aren't self-disciplined because you worked hard when you were fired up to work. You're self-disciplined when you continue to work hard when the last thing you want to do is work. You aren't self-disciplined because you can't afford candy, so you don't eat it. You exhibit self-control when you deny the treats that are offered freely to you, for example when you're at a party with a buffet selection of high-calorie snacks. You aren't self-disciplined when you wake up early in the morning to work on your new business. You're self-disciplined when you still wake up early in the morning when it seems that your business is going nowhere. Misfortunes aren't fun to deal with, but bearing them nobly strengthens your ability to handle even worse circumstances in the future. In a sense, trials and tribulations are like training. You may not enjoy it, but you know that eventually it will pay off and more than recoup for any suffering you're going through at the moment. Day 56, on thinking you can. If you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win, but think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out in the world we find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man. But soon or late the man who wins is the one who thinks he can. Walter D. Wintle. We often limit ourselves because we don't think we can achieve something. Today it may be hard for you to imagine that you can live without dessert or that you can live below your means. It doesn't mean it's impossible, though, it's only your subjective opinion, not a fact of life. Moreover, thinking that you're unlikely to win means that you'll put in less effort than you could. Why would you work your fingers to the bone if you were uncertain of success? Rock climbing has made it particularly clear to me. When you approach the route thinking that it's beyond your abilities, you won't do your best. After all, why try your best if you know that you aren't going to climb it anyway? You'll most likely give up when you encounter the first obstacle, while a person thinking they can climb it will fight as hard as they can to keep climbing. In the end, the person that doesn't believe in their abilities will give up along the way, while the person that is certain of their abilities will reach the top. Periodically try things that you think are outside of your ability with a positive attitude and the belief that you can succeed. Chances are you'll get a positive surprise and achieve something you thought was beyond your reach. Week 9. Day 57, on 2 types of happiness. People who have high levels of what is known as eudaimonic well-being, the kind of happiness that comes from having a deep sense of purpose and meaning in life, think Mother Teresa, showed very favorable gene expression profiles in their immune cells. They had low levels of inflammatory gene expression and strong expression of antiviral and antibody genes. However, people who had relatively high levels of hedonic well-being, the type of happiness that comes from consummatory self-gratification, think most celebrities, actually showed just the opposite. They had an adverse expression profile involving high inflammation and low antiviral and antibody gene expression. Mark Wheeler. Science suggests that the fleeting happiness you get from succumbing to a temptation is inferior, at least when it comes to its effect on how your genes express, to the type of happiness you can draw out of a sense of purpose and meaning in life. According to the study, a person guided by a deep sense of purpose is less likely to suffer from inflammation and more likely to have a stronger immune system. While both types of happiness can generate the same positive emotions, it's those with high levels of eudaimonic well-being that benefit more. Since the results come from a study on just 80 participants, we shouldn't treat the conclusions as a broadly applicable scientific fact. However, there's definitely immense power in having a mission in your life. When all of your decisions are aligned toward a better future, even if you're suffering at times because things don't go as planned or it's hard to maintain self-discipline, you wake up fired up, with vigor and a sense of purpose you'd never get if you were to prioritize hedonic well-being. Day 58, on cultivating physical excellence. For in everything that men do, the body is useful, and in all uses of the body it is of great importance to be in as high a state of physical efficiency as possible. Why, even in the process of thinking, in which the use of the body seems to be reduced to a minimum, it is matter of common knowledge that grave mistakes may often be traced to bad health. And because the body is in a bad condition, loss of memory, depression, discontent, insanity often assail the mind so violently as to drive whatever knowledge it contains clean out of it. But a sound and healthy body is a strong protection to a man, and at least there is no danger then of such a calamity happening to him through physical weakness. On the contrary, it is likely that his sound condition will serve to produce effects the opposite of those that arise from bad condition. And surely a man of sense would submit to anything to obtain the effects that are the opposite of those mentioned in my list. Besides, it is a disgrace to grow old through sheer carelessness before seeing what manner of man you may become by developing your bodily strength and beauty to their highest limit. Socrates points out that there are several dangers in not cultivating physical excellence. First, an unhealthy body leads to an unhealthy mind. Can a person suffering from preventable health disorders dedicate all of their resources toward personal growth? Physical debilitations that you can overcome with your own efforts, such as obesity or a weak immune system due to bad nutritional habits, sap your energy and limit your potential. If you're constantly getting sick, how likely are you to maintain self-discipline? I don't know about you, but whenever I get so sick that I can barely walk around the house, my routine is out of the window and it takes a considerable amount of time to return to it. The more often you get sick, the more difficult it is to build new habits and maintain successful routines. Second, a strong body is better prepared, both physically and mentally, to deal with any health problems that you can't prevent. Consequently, you can more quickly recover from those hardships, or accept them with more ease, and refocus your efforts on your most important long-term goals. Last, but most definitely not least, developing your body to your own highest limit, which doesn't mean becoming a musclehead or having a perfectly sculpted body, is a valuable goal in itself. It shows you how much you can push your limits, teaches you how powerful long-term dedication can be, and can transform your entire mindset. In fact, just cultivating physical excellence on its own can develop powerful self-discipline. I can attest to these benefits. When I started exercising and my body began to change, I soon saw my mental state reflect the positive external changes. A great amount of the experience I have had with overcoming temptations and sticking to my resolutions comes from physical activity and my resolve to become the strongest person I can. If you aren't putting your health and fitness first, it's high time you change that. Day 59, on your vices masquerading as virtues. No vice exists which does not pretend to be more or less like some virtue, and which does not take advantage of this assumed resemblance. Jean de la Bruyere. Bad habits are so difficult to give up not only because they're pleasant, but also because they often masquerade as virtues. When you think of your vice as a friend rather than your enemy, it's even harder to eliminate it from your life. For example, people who sleep in and suffer from low productivity might claim that, thanks to staying up late, they have a great social life. They fail to notice they're paying too high a price for a benefit they could obtain in a different way without jeopardizing their long-term goals. I used to believe that it was good to jump from one business idea to another. I thought that by trying different things, I would eventually find the perfect idea that would magically grow into a successful business. In reality, I lacked the self-discipline to focus and wasted several years on endeavors that were destined to fail. Were there some benefits in spreading my attention so thin? Certainly. They weren't more valuable than what I was losing, though, and what I considered a virtue was actually a vice that was sabotaging my goals. Are there any vices of yours that might masquerade as virtues? Question your deeply held beliefs and ask yourself if your supposed virtues are indeed helpful, or perhaps they're like a friend that gives you $1 with one hand while stealing $5 from your wallet with the other. Day 60, on pressing on. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination are omnipotent. The slogan "Press on" has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race. Calvin Coolidge. When in doubt, press on. It sounds obvious and trite, yet the simple fact of life that people who are persistent are usually more successful than less determined geniuses often escapes us. Time heals all wounds, and time, or rather, persistence that is exercised over a long period of time also leads to success. In the world of self-publishing, many authors are extremely talented, but they fail to achieve success because they give up after releasing one or two flops. Meanwhile, the ones who initially lack writing skills or formal education but keep on going, writing one book after another until one finally succeeds, are the ones who occupy the bestseller lists. People who can speak foreign languages aren't born with a gene that allows them to acquire them quickly. Most of them aren't smarter than you or me, yet they manage to master several languages, including the ones that are thought to be almost impossible to learn by a foreigner. Their secret lies in persistence. If you learn 10 new words a day, you learn 3,650 words a year. Consequently, within a few years you'll possess an extensive vocabulary, all thanks to a small, daily time investment that doesn't require any special talents or being a genius. If you're currently struggling with your goal, remind yourself that even if you feel like you're lost in a maze, pressing on will eventually help you reach your destination, and in many cases, it's the only thing that separates the winners from the losers. Day 61, on extreme actions. You don't get extreme talent, fame, or success without extreme actions. Derek Sivers. It's important to approach your goals in a sustainable way, thinking in terms of months, years, or decades instead of mere days or weeks. However, at the same time, taking extreme actions can pay handsome dividends, too. Balancing between the extreme and more sustainable approach is a difficult art, but in essence it comes down to taking extreme actions during a relatively brief period of time, while ensuring that your actions are sustainable over the long term. For example, when my first book became a bestseller, I stuck to a strict publication schedule to benefit from the gained momentum. I launched my second book, on which I had been working since I finished the first draft of my first book, a mere 3 weeks later. My third book went live in another 2 weeks, and my fourth was released 3 weeks after the previous one. From there, I slowed down my pace, but I still managed to release at least 4 new books each year. In the short term, my actions were extreme. And precisely because of that, I was able to build a large following quickly. However, after an initial sprint, you need to slow down to go the distance, and that's when I transitioned to a little less extreme approach, but one still exhibited by few authors. Are you taking extreme actions to gain momentum and separate yourself from the ones who don't have the self-discipline needed to push themselves hard for a short period of time? How can you intensify your efforts for a couple of weeks or months to maximize your results before transitioning to a more sustainable and less extreme approach? Day 62, on moonshot projects. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. John F. Kennedy. As we've already discussed several times, living your life the hard way makes it paradoxically easier, while avoiding the hard things makes your life more difficult. When it comes to accomplishing your goals, the hard truth is that easy accomplishments often go away quickly, while larger projects produce more lasting results. For one, setting close to impossible goals requires you to think in categories producing pivotal differences, and not mere tweaks. For example, losing 5 pounds, or 2 kilos, requires a small tweak. You can eat less for 2 weeks and you'll accomplish your goal. However, you won't fix the underlying issue of being overweight, and probably soon regain the weight. How about losing 50 pounds, or 20 kilos, this year? You can no longer afford to think in terms of small tweaks. You need a permanent change, a change in your habits and identity that will address the cause of the problem and lead to a permanent solution. Audacious goals can also transform your life. While reaching safe, easy objectives won't change much in the grand scheme of things. If you want to save $1 million for retirement, you'll need a different strategy than if you only want to save enough for a rainy day fund. A moonshot project of building a $1 million nest egg might lead you to building a business that will not only generate $1 million for retirement, but also help you retire early, a pleasant side effect you initially didn't anticipate at all. As an additional benefit, big goals are more motivating, which means you'll be less likely to give up when you encounter obstacles. Granted, you need to pursue the hard things in a smart way so that you won't find yourself walking with your head in the clouds. Set an audacious goal, but accompany it with a realistic deadline. An ambitious goal is still a big accomplishment, even if it takes you years to achieve it. Day 63, on the will being stronger than the skill. Champions aren't made in gyms, champions are made from something they have deep inside them, a desire, a dream, a vision. They have to have last-minute stamina, they have to be a little faster, they have to have the skill and the will. But the will must be stronger than the skill. Muhammad Ali. When you switch your focus from instant gratification toward long-term accomplishment, create a mental image of why you should reject the instant rewards and keep going despite hardships, failures, sacrifices, and lack of compensation. A detailed vision of your wished-for future will fuel your resolve, compensating for any weaknesses you might have or difficulties that might stand on your way toward success. For example, I struggled with extreme shyness as a teenager. I set a goal to develop self-confidence and feel relaxed in all kinds of social settings. I was, and still am, an introverted lone wolf who needs solitude more than I need other people. However, my will was strong. I knew I needed to make this change in order to stop limiting my personal growth, something I found and still find is one of my most important values. This deep desire kept me going, despite my personality being extremely unsuited to social settings. Note that your deep desire doesn't have to be about you. You've surely heard stories about people performing incredible feats of strength to rescue a victim of an accident. For example, in 2013 in Oregon, teenage sisters Hannah, age 16, and Haley, age 14, lifted a 3,000-pound, 1,360 kilograms, tractor to save their father, who was pinned underneath it. The mechanism that supports such impossible actions still baffles scientists. We only know one thing for sure: under normal circumstances, Hannah and Haley wouldn't be able to lift a tractor. It was their will, their immense desire to save their father, that gave them superhuman strength. If you're struggling with a certain goal, think who could benefit from you achieving it. How could you improve somebody's life or perhaps even save a life thanks to persevering and accomplishing your objective? Week 10. Day 64, on seeing obstacles as hurdles. If we choose to see the obstacles in our path as barriers, we stop trying. If we choose to see the obstacles as hurdles, we can leap over them. Successful people don't have fewer problems. They have determined that nothing will stop them from going forward. Ben Carson. One might argue that it's mere semantics, barriers or hurdles, both make it difficult to reach success. However, thinking of a problem as a hurdle means approaching it as something that you can possibly walk around or leap over, but a barrier sounds like something that is impermeable and a fixed limitation. Nobody likes to face obstacles, but it's thanks to the obstacles you face today that you gain the ability to overcome other hardships in the future, ones that would possibly crush you if it weren't for the experience you're having today. Problem-solving skills are exactly that, skills. The more often you encounter problems and resolve them, the better you'll get at dealing with them. For this reason, as a great exercise for building self-discipline and mental resilience, I strongly suggest exposing yourself to difficult tasks. Embrace problems in your life and look at dealing with difficulties as training yourself to see problems as hurdles instead of barriers. Exert willpower to deal with the hard problems, instead of looking for the easiest way out. Consider several ways to tackle the issue and try to visualize how each solution can help you leap over the hurdle. You don't necessarily have to throw problems at yourself from every direction. You can also practice by helping your friends solve their problems or by imagining you're facing the problems you're reading about in a book or seeing in a TV show. Just for practice, imagine that you were about to launch your business when a key investor backed out, leaving you $20,000 short of the budget necessary to produce the first line of your product. To make matters worse, you've already accepted payments from your first clients and need to deliver within 2 months. Most people would consider it an impermeable barrier. Game over, say goodbye to your dreams. You, as a mentally resilient and self-disciplined person, will look at it as a hurdle. What can you do to leap over it and keep going, despite such a difficulty being thrown in your way? Day 65, on self-discipline with money. Try to save something while your salary is small. It's impossible to save after you begin to earn more. Jack Benny. Whenever the topic of winning the lottery comes up in a conversation, I always say that what so many people consider the biggest blessing in their entire lives is actually the biggest curse for most people. Let me explain why, but first, some curious facts. The numbers are terrifying. According to 2015 research from the Pew Charitable Trusts, 41% of respondents don't have enough liquid savings to cover an unexpected $2,000 cost, such as a medical emergency, and a typical household can't replace even 1 month of income with liquid savings. It's important to note we aren't talking about people living in poverty. The same respondents are the ones buying new homes, cars, TVs, smartphones, and other gadgets. The reason for their lack of savings isn't lack of income, it's lack of self-discipline. While a small percentage of respondents probably do exercise some kind of financial self-control, a great majority doesn't. What do you think? How likely would they be to exercise self-discipline with money upon winning the lottery if they can't manage their finances now? Even if they won millions of dollars, later on they would be in the same spot as they are today, if not in an even worse situation. That's why winning the lottery, the dream of so many, can actually be the biggest curse. For this reason, no matter how well off you are today, it's of crucial importance to start saving your money now if you aren't doing so already. It doesn't matter if you're saving $10 or $10,000 a month, it's the habit that counts. When your financial situation improves, and as a person interested in building self-discipline, it most likely will, it will ensure that you continue exerting self-control with money. If you're lacking such a habit today, don't fool yourself into thinking you'll control your finances when you start making more. Build healthy financial habits when you have little disposable income, and saving money will be easier when you'll have more money to save. And if you do win the lottery, you'll thank me for encouraging you to instill financial discipline today. Day 66, on pointless complaints. But my nose is running. What do you have hands for, idiot, if not to wipe it? But how is it right that there be running noses in the first place? Instead of thinking up protests, wouldn't it be easier just to wipe your nose? Epictetus 63. Grumbling about everything is a favorite pastime of countless individuals all over the world. It's incredible how much time and energy people waste on something as pointless as complaining, particularly when they can do nothing about their source of protests. It takes self-discipline to stop complaining, and a great deal of it if you're like most people, who can't go even one day without voicing their dissatisfaction with the world. Consequently, managing your complaints is a great exercise to improve your self-control. Starting today, try to go without complaining for as long as you can. Whenever you catch yourself complaining, turn it into a solution. Try to find something good about whatever dissatisfies you, or let it go if the solution is beyond your control or the problem isn't worth your energy. For example, if you're at a restaurant and your meal isn't as warm as you'd like it to be, you can ask the waiter to heat it, turning a complaint into a solution. Consider it an exercise in voluntary discomfort, finding something good about the source of the complaint, or simply eat it, having decided that complaining about it isn't worth your energy. Such mental training will not only improve your impulse self-control, but also make you a more positive person. In contrast, what do you get out of complaining besides ruining your mood? Day 67, on borrowing money. Every time you borrow money, you're robbing your future self. Nathan W. Morris. Borrowing money for consumption is a widespread disease in today's world, fueled by excess and materialism. Unlike taking on a business loan to achieve a return on investment that is higher than the interest rate, a practice that, when done wisely, can enrich your future self, consumer loans only serve to satisfy the desire for instant gratification, while robbing, sometimes spectacularly, your future self. Each time you're thinking about getting a loan to satisfy a desire to own an item that belongs in the want category, imagine that you have the power to stop your past self from getting all the consumer loans you have today. If you don't have any, pretend that you do. Just like that, you can erase all of them and finally gain peace of mind. Would you still go into debt to finance your toys? 5 years from now, you'll look back at your past self, puzzled at how short-sighted you were to gift yourself with such a bad future for the fleeting gratification of getting a new car or TV. But I can get such great terms, it's almost a free loan. You're saying? The terms don't matter. The habit of prioritizing your present self over your future self eventually affects not only your finances, but every other area of your life. Developing discipline to do without unnecessary feel-good purchases you can't afford is one of the most important things you can do to gain more self-control and ensure that your future is better than the present. Day 68, on choosing the right motivator. For me, success was always going to be a Lamborghini. But now I've got it. It just sits on my drive. 50 Cent. External rewards like a Lamborghini are poor motivators. For one, I've heard countless times about people willing to endure immense torture to stay true to their values or save their loved ones, but I've yet to hear a story of a person willing to die for their new Lexus. Second, materialistic rewards give fleeting happiness and often come with more problems than benefits. Just ask any owner of a Lamborghini how much fun it is to see people constantly taking pictures of their car, how fun it is to spend thousands of dollars for a simple checkup, or how stressed out they are in the parking lot, afraid of an envious driver of a beat-up car dinging their shiny vehicle. Last but most definitely not least, a powerful motivator should feel like a necessity, a thing you can't live without, and not a mere toy that displays your high status, which ultimately nobody cares about. If you're struggling to stick to your resolution, perhaps the only motivation you have is the extrinsic type, driven by money, fame, or prizes. This type of motivation isn't bad per se. What's bad is when it's the only thing that keeps you going. Whenever you're setting new goals, go beyond mere external rewards. Instead, support your self-discipline with intrinsic motivators, internal rewards, such as doing something out of a need to grow as a person, achieve more independence, realize your full potential, enjoy yourself, learn, or explore. Combine this motivation with a need to make the world a better place, and you'll have a powerful source of inspiration that will enable you to grin and bear the difficulties that you'll undoubtedly encounter along the way. Day 69, on climbing steep hills. To climb steep hills requires slow pace at first. William Shakespeare. If you think of your goal as a steep hill, imagine how ridiculous it would be to stop midway just because you're slowly scrambling up instead of sprinting all the way to the top. That's precisely what many people do when they start working on a new goal and realize that the journey will take longer than they expected. What difference does it make that reaching a goal takes you longer than you planned? If you want to climb a steep hill, will you stop climbing it because you can't climb it in 2 hours, but can in 3? Will you retreat to the bottom of the hill and forever stare at its peak, frustrated by the dissatisfying pace of the climb? Another mistake is the assumption that if something is slow in the beginning, it will stay that way. When I started my career as a self-published author, I tried several different genres. Things were going slow at the beginning because I needed to figure out which genre and style fitted me best. Once I established the proper direction, I released my first bestseller, then the second, and soon there was a snowball effect. How wise would it have been to give up during the first several months, frustrated by the slow pace? Day 70, on Parkinson's Law. It is a commonplace observation that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. Cyril Northcote Parkinson. Limiting the time available to complete a given task is one of the most powerful secrets of productive people and a powerful way to overcome procrastination. If you lack the self-control needed to work in a focused way, give yourself a challenging deadline to enforce concentration. Suddenly, what normally takes 2 hours to accomplish, or rather, 2 hours of intermittent work and distractions, will only take 30 minutes, or less, of 100% focused work at your highest potential. At the moment I'm writing these words, I have a goal to write 4 entries in 50 minutes. Because of my self-imposed time pressure, I'm 100% focused on the task at hand. I can't distract or second-guess myself, two things that interrupt the creative process and slow down my writing pace. Since I have given myself little time to get the task done, procrastination is a non-issue. I can't afford to dilly-dally because I'll miss my deadline. To further motivate myself to work quickly, I established a reward for performing the task on time: reading the new autobiography of Richard Branson, one of my business idols. This simple trick can become one of your most powerful allies toward increasing your productivity. If you've been putting off a certain unpleasant task, get to it now, but instead of giving yourself plenty of time to finish it, do it in 25% of your usual time frame. The new, greatly shortened period of work should reduce your resistance to getting started, and the challenge of doing it more quickly should bring out some excitement that will additionally fuel your resolve to get it done. Week 11. Day 71, on taking a step forward. If you don't ask, the answer's always no. If you don't step forward, you're always in the same place. Nora Roberts. When I was battling against my shyness, I set a goal to approach attractive women in the street. I knew that if I did it several dozen times, I would most likely overcome my social fears and transform into a new person. What helped me act, in spite of immense anxiety, was the realization that talking myself out of approaching a woman would certainly equate to a no. Approaching her and getting rejected couldn't worsen my situation. In fact, I could only gain, because even a rejection was still a valuable lesson I wouldn't learn if I chose inaction. Likewise, many people hesitate to start working on their goals out of a fear of failure or self-doubt. They fail to realize that if they don't take a step forward, they'll be in the same place. Even if they take an unsuccessful step forward and need to backtrack, they'd still gain some experience. There's nothing to lose, and potentially a lot to gain. Are there any goals you'd like to pursue, but are afraid that you'll embarrass yourself or fail? Have you ever considered that not acting on them leads to surefire failure, while an attempt gives you at least a small chance of success and a 100% chance of learning something new? Day 72, on the value of the struggle. To have striven, to have made the effort, to have been true to certain ideals, this alone is worth the struggle. William Osler. We fantasize about the day we receive a trophy, cash out, step on the scales and see the perfect weight, travel to this beautiful place, step into this new spacious house, or marry that beautiful girl or guy. The focus is on the success, not the struggle. And it's understandable. Success is glamorous, memorable, and marketable, while the struggle is drab, disagreeable, and unattractive for the general public. Yet, it's making the effort, struggling, and sticking to your resolutions that shapes you as a person. Success is a reward for having given it your best, but it's not always within your control whether and when you get to enjoy it. Whenever you find yourself discouraged by your lack of success, remind yourself that the process alone is your reward. It's in your hands whether you allow yourself to see the rewards the struggle generates or ignore them, mindlessly pursing the end result as the sole indicator of success. I failed numerous times in business. I could have despaired that I had lost so much time and money, but I hadn't really failed. I had been true to my values of pursuing the entrepreneurial life. I kept going, despite the obstacles I constantly encountered along the way. Over and over again, I beat entrepreneurial depression and found it in myself yet again to get back up and try again. Eventually, my efforts paid off, but even if it had taken longer to get the results or if I had died before reaching them, the struggle would still have been worth it for the immense changes I underwent on the journey to pursue my dreams. Day 73, on having fun. Fun is at the core of the way I like to do business, and it has been key to everything I've done from the outset. More than any other element, fun is the secret of Virgin's success. I am aware that the idea of business as being fun and creative goes right against the grain of convention, and it's certainly not how they teach it at some of those business schools, where business means hard grind and lots of discounted cash flows and net present values. Richard Branson. Building self-discipline and working on your long-term goals doesn't have to be a chore. In fact, if it is, you'll have a hard time reaching success because if something bores you to tears or doesn't produce much excitement, it's difficult to stick to it in the long term. Probably the most common area in which I see most people struggling because of lack of fun is exercise. If you succumb to the popular notion that exercise has to be repetitive, painful, and boring, guess what? A few weeks from now, you'll be back in front of your TV, wondering what motivated you to do such a stupid thing as attending those torturous fitness classes. The only way to develop a permanent habit of regular physical activity is to find an exercise you enjoy. Without the fun factor, exercise will always feel like a chore, and you probably already have enough obligations in your life. The same applies to virtually any other endeavor. I treat my business seriously, but at the same time I'm trying to make it a bit more fun, either by throwing in a joke here and there while writing a book, coming up with a fun writing challenge, or testing new exciting ideas. Do you consider working on your goals enjoyable and fun, or is it mostly a chore? If it's the latter, time to grab a notepad and make a list of things you can do to introduce more fun and excitement. Day 74, on acting less and thinking more. Act less, think more. Reflect on what really matters to you. Stop doing anything that isn't valuable, that doesn't make you happy. Savor life. Richard Koch. This advice goes against the grain as self-help authors usually suggest to behave the other way around, think less, and act more. The danger in acting more than thinking is that eventually you'll find yourself working on goals you don't really care that much about or doing things in a less than optimal way. For example, when I was working on my fitness goals, I acted a lot. I religiously followed my workout schedule and did everything I could to build a strong body, including eating foods recommended for bodybuilders, recording videos of my lifts to improve my technique, and even hiring a fitness coach. I acted a lot, but thought too little. It was only when I stopped and reflected on what mattered to me that I realized that I had never wanted to be a bodybuilder. I was following the wrong ideal, chasing something that didn't make me happy or produce any visible results. Upon this realization, I redesigned my entire approach to fitness and started doing something that finally felt natural instead of forced. Periodically pause and reflect on your own choices. Are you pursuing goals that matter to you? Are you working on your goals in a way that fits your lifestyle, or is there imbalance and disharmony? Day 75, on haters. Luke. Don't give in to hate. That leads to the dark side. Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's a fact of life that when you do something worthwhile, you will have haters. People will criticize you for everything and anything, for a variety of reasons. People accused me of a lack of respect toward women merely because I wanted to overcome shyness and be able to talk with attractive females. Others criticized me for my efforts to lose weight and build a fit physique. Yet others laughed at my attempts to build a successful business, claiming that I would never accomplish my ambitious financial goals. Today people criticize my books or send me impolite emails because I annoyed them in some unfathomable way. In the beginning, it bothered me a lot. I wondered if there was something wrong with me, if the people criticizing me knew something that had escaped me. Time passed, and with the growing number of goals I had reached and the trust in myself I had consequently developed, I realized there was no value in the feedback that was coming from haters. Giving in to hate and letting it get to you leads to rancor, a poison that can jeopardize your long-term goals. I'd love to share with you a secret, foolproof way to deal with haters, but in the end the only solution is the most obvious one: you ignore whatever insults and malice they throw at you and focus on yourself instead. We don't know each other, but I know that if you're still reading this book, you're a person who cares about self-improvement and making the world a better place. Don't let the negative individuals instill low self-esteem or doubt in you. I'm sure you have good intentions and the ability to make your dreams come true. Shield yourself from negativity by surrounding yourself with the light side, other people pursuing their goals, empowering books, mentors, and visiting venues or participating in online communities that exhibit positive values. Day 76, on changing your mind. When my information changes, I alter my conclusions. What do you do, sir? John Maynard Keynes. I like to say that self-discipline is a powerful force, but only as long as you apply it deliberately in the right circumstances. Blindly exerting self-control when your efforts are fruitless and unlikely to lead to positive results is dangerous because it's not only a waste of time, but may also lead to bitterness. I was so self-disciplined and yet I failed. Self-discipline is overrated, I'm done with it, a person might exclaim upon realizing that their efforts were for naught, but failing to notice that their self-discipline wasn't to be blamed, it was their wrong use of it that resulted in wasting time. For example, I once worked in the search engine optimization (SEO) industry. I helped clients build backlinks to their websites so that they could rank higher on Google. In addition to client work, I built my own sites. At one point, I had 40 sites, each targeting different keywords and covering a different topic. I was extremely self-disciplined about this business, as I was building new sites every week and constantly writing new articles for them. When my revenue had finally shot up to around $1,000 a month, Google introduced an update to their algorithm and my most successful sites dropped in rankings. My income fell by over 50% overnight. I discovered that it wasn't anything new in the SEO industry. Google periodically introduced new updates and people like me regularly had to rebuild their businesses according to the new rules. Upon realizing that my business would forever stand on wobbly legs, I stopped working on new sites and retreated from the industry. Choosing to stay self-disciplined would have been the wrong choice, because it would probably never lead me to building the lucrative, stable business I was seeking to achieve. From time to time, revise your goals to factor in any new information you have recently acquired. Does it solidify your reasons to keep going, or is it a sign that perhaps you should alter your conclusions and refocus your efforts on something else? Day 77, on hurting yourself with your own judgments. If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now. Marcus Aurelius. When people who are on a diet slip up, it's not that one-off slip-up that causes them to fail, it's their judgment about it, namely persuading themselves that since they made a mistake, all of their prior efforts are now for naught. What follows is self-guilt, which leads to self-doubt, which awakens the need to self-comfort, usually by eating forbidden foods, after all, in their minds they've already lost, and subsequently ruining their entire diet. A similar phenomenon happens with other goals, too. A person saving money who was forced to spend their entire savings on an emergency expense might consider it a reason to stop saving money. What's the point of saving if one unplanned cost can wipe out the entire fund? Their incorrect judgment of the situation subsequently destroys the positive habit they've built, instead of seeing the situation as a powerful demonstration of how important saving money is. Whenever you find yourself doubting that you can achieve your goal because you made a mistake or failed to hold out against a temptation, remind yourself that it's in your power to give this event either a negative or a positive meaning. You can consider it as a reason to give up or as a valuable lesson that will help you in your future endeavors. Week 12. Day 78. 78, on collaboration. Life is not a solo act. It's a huge collaboration, and we all need to assemble around us the people who care about us and support us in times of strife. Tim Gunn. Even though there's self in the word self-discipline, it doesn't mean that you need to refuse the help of other people or that you need to reinvent the wheel because you can't make your decisions based on the knowledge acquired by other people. It's easier to put up a fight against temptations and stick to your resolutions when others have your back. Learning from the experience of others, regardless if it's in the form of a book or a conversation, makes things easier, too. I've greatly benefited from the power of social support by participating in online forums. I'm pretty sure that if it weren't for the people I've gotten to know over the years of my entrepreneurial journey, it would have been much harder for me to reach success. Knowing that the people who inspired me also had faced obstacles and were tempted to give up, it was easier for me to keep going when it was me who was facing the immense difficulties. It doesn't mean that you need to become great at making online friends, though. Most of the people who immensely helped me on my journey don't even know me. It was the breadcrumbs they left in the form of forum posts and articles that changed my life, not my friendship with them. Another way to collaborate is to find a person who will hold you accountable, a friend who's on the same journey as you, or perhaps an online support group. The key to benefiting from this strategy is choosing the right accountability partner. Go with a person who's strict, rather than lax, so that when you don't feel like doing something, he or she will push you to keep going rather than give you a pass and a pat on the back. Ideally, this person should be great at what you want to accomplish, and if not great, at least slightly better than you. Last but most definitely not least, if there's a way to accomplish your goal more quickly through working with a reputable coach and you can afford it, do that. I learned the fundamental knowledge about self-publishing in just a couple of weeks, thanks to working with a person who was knowledgeable about the industry. It greatly shortened my learning curve, inspired me, and helped me avoid several obstacles that would have otherwise tested my resolve, if not outright discouraged from entering this business. Day 79, on Book S. Books are the quietest and most constant of friends, they are the most accessible and wisest of counselors, and the most patient of teachers. Charles William Eliot. Continuing the topic of support, by far the most important friend on my journey of building self-discipline, developing mental resilience, and working on my long-term goals were non-fiction books that were written by people who have achieved my dreams. Books were, are, and will always be one of the most valuable things a person wishing to change themselves can learn from to make their dreams come true. Instead of idle talk about books being incredible, I think I've already made my case clear. Today I want to share with you 3 books I believe you should read for education and inspiration. Here they are. 1. The Millionaire Fastlane by M.J. DeMarco. The Millionaire Fastlane was the book that changed it all for me when it comes not only to business, but also my attitude about work and life in general. In addition to countless lessons about how to start and run a successful business, you'll learn how to become a person tuned in to the needs of others, a skill that will aid you in all kinds of endeavors. Granted, not everyone equates success with financial success, so if you don't care about achieving financial independence, you can probably skip this book. 2. The One Thing by Gary Keller. Richard Koch is the original author of books about the 80-20th principle, stating that 80% of the results come from 20% of the effort. I strongly recommend his books, but when it comes to the most accessible introduction to the topic, Gary Keller's book is the winner. The premise behind The One Thing is answering the following question: what's the one thing you can do such that by doing it everything else will be easier or unnecessary? The book delves deep into the details on why and how single focus is so powerful and important for success. I've made this rule one of the most important guiding principles in my life, and I strongly suggest implementing it in your life, too. 3. A Guide to the Good Life by William B. Irvine. Roman Stoicism Adapted to the Modern World by William B. Irvine is one of the most helpful life philosophies you can embrace to live a happier life. Stoics were also big on self-control, mental resilience and preparedness, so Irvine's book is an all-encompassing guide on how to banish negative emotions, gain more happiness, and become a more valuable member of society. The most important takeaway for me is practicing your resilience by visualizing bad events. I regularly use this strategy for reducing worry and increasing my peace of mind. Day 80, on cultivating positivity when things go bad. Good humor is a tonic for mind and body. It is the best antidote for anxiety and depression. It is a business asset. It attracts and keeps friends. It lightens human burdens. It is the direct route to serenity and contentment. Grenville Kleiser. Treating everything seriously is a surefire recipe for frustration and depression, particularly when you repeatedly get hit with one obstacle after another with no chance to catch your breath. Negative thoughts can sprout in even the most positive minds, but it's your choice whether you nurture them or pull them out. When I was struggling to grow one of my businesses, my laptop broke down. I not only had to buy a new computer to be able to continue working, but also pay a steep fee to have my data recovered. I've since learned how important regular data backup is. To make matters worse, all of that happened while I was deep in debt. I tried to keep my spirits high, but make no mistake, it was one of the darkest, most hopeless periods of my life. Still, if it weren't for at least trying to be positive about the future, I'm sure I would have had a challenging time sticking to the business that had landed me in so much trouble. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You will face seemingly hopeless situations and your self-discipline will be tested on numerous occasions. How will you maintain good spirits despite the negative circumstances? What are your most effective techniques to make yourself feel better? I strongly suggest creating a list of simple ways you can improve your mood that you'll be able to turn to when you find yourself in a distressing situation. Day 81, on identifying your resources. With every accident, ask yourself what abilities you have for making a proper use of it. If you see an attractive person, you will find that self-restraint is the ability you have against your desire. If you are in pain, you will find fortitude. If you hear unpleasant language, you will find patience. Epictetus. For every problem you face, there's an ability or resource you can tap into to overcome it. The key is to discover what it is and immediately put it to use. Unfortunately, many people default to discouragement or frustration rather than adopt a resourceful attitude and look for possible solutions. Little good comes out of covering your eyes, wishing the problem will go away on its own. The best way to prepare yourself for setbacks is to visualize them and seek solutions before these problems materialize. Not all of your negative predictions will come to pass, but the ones that do won't paralyze you as much if you prepare yourself for them. For example, if you're on a diet, think of some common scenarios that might jeopardize your adherence to it. What will you do if somebody you always wanted to meet invites you to dinner at a less than healthy restaurant? What will you do if you find yourself starving at the airport while waiting for the connecting flight? What will you do when you fail to resist the temptation to eat chocolate and turn an unplanned treat into a full-blown cheat day? By creating a list of potential solutions while being at the top of your game and not being influenced by negative emotions, you'll save yourself the time and energy that is wasted on trying to solve problems with a clouded mind. Day 82, on extreme focus. Take up one idea. Make that one idea your life, think of it, dream of it, live on that idea. Let the brain, muscles, nerves, every part of your body, be full of that idea, and just leave every other idea alone. This is the way to success. Swami Vivekananda. While flawless, 100% focus on a single idea is close to impossible for a modern human being, there's a lot you can gain from focusing as much as you can on just one goal. In fact, I consider it so important that I wrote an entire book about it titled The Ultimate Focus Strategy. There are two primary benefits of making a single idea your life. The first one is that limiting your focus to a single thing requires a great deal of self-discipline, which subsequently makes it an excellent exercise in cultivating self-control. I've acquired a lot of self-discipline, and finally achieved my goal of building a successful business, thanks to limiting my focus to one business model. Sticking to one thing has taught me the value of patience, dedication, and made me realize how powerful small and consistent improvements can be over the long term. The second benefit of extreme focus is that by centering your life around the one most important endeavor, you'll be more likely to reach it than if you were to spread your attention thin. You have higher chances of implementing new nutritional habits and losing 20 pounds, or 10 kilos, in the next 6 months than trying to lose weight while also implementing a new workout routine, building a side business, fighting against your fear of public speaking, saving money for an emergency fund, and learning a foreign language. If self-discipline is a resource that you can deplete, scientists are still trying to figure it out, it makes sense to spend it judiciously, starting with your most important goal.